Dad, really? Mom's right. You really are an fool. Those were the last words I heard from my daughter before I hung up. Over the next few days, she sent texts and left voice messages, but I deleted them all after hearing the first few words. They echoed my ex-wife's sentiments. My daughter made her choice 10 years ago, and I see her attempts at reconciliation as insincere. I'm Tom Williams, formerly married to Kayla Williams. We were together for 17 years until everything fell apart. And of course, I got the blame. Our divorce courts are biased against men, always siding with the ex-wife and giving her full custody, letting her paint me as the villain. The divorce laws in this country seem to be written by people who hate men. We had 2 kids, a 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought everything was great. I loved my wife, and I believed she loved me. Our kids were smart, athletic, and well-behaved. Carly, our daughter, was a daddy's girl, and Josh, our son, was a friendly and athletic boy. I worked as a mechanical engineer, and Kayla was an accountant. We both kept fit and looked good. Carly idolized me and wanted to be an engineer like me. She got her driver's license on her 16th birthday and loved driving. She would help me in the garage from a young age, handing me tools while I worked on my car collection. We often went to car shows together, spending weekends immersed in our shared hobby. I was good at household chores, and Carly liked helping me. I taught her plumbing, electrical work, drywall, and painting. She even assisted with installing new appliances and laying a concrete slab. For most things, she came to me for advice and help, while she turned to her mom for girl issues. We were open and honest with each other, and she came to me when she was in trouble. Josh, on the other hand, wasn't into cars. He was a good student, excelling in English literature and social studies, and talked about becoming a lawyer. He was more attached to his mom than me. A few weeks ago, Kayla started acting distant and occasionally zoned out. When I asked if everything was okay, she brushed me off. It was Friday night when I got home from work at 6 o'clock, and things felt off. There were no dinner smells, and Carly didn't greet me. I assumed the kids were out with friends. I put my briefcase in my office and went upstairs to change. In the bedroom, I found Kayla's black dress, lingerie, stockings, and heels laid out. It seemed we were going out, though she hadn't told me. She was in the bathroom applying makeup when I walked in. "Where are we going, honey?" I asked, taking off my shirt. "We're not going anywhere," she replied. "Then why are you wearing so much makeup and laying out a hot outfit?" "I'm not going anywhere with you. I'm going out." "Really? Where are you going, and where are the kids?" "The kids are spending the night with friends. I have a date, and I won't be back until morning." "A date? You're not coming back until morning?" "Exactly. If all goes well, I'll spend the night with him." "Are you insane? You can't expect me to put up with this. If you want to go out, wait until the divorce is final." "Stop being ridiculous. There won't be a divorce. I just need this one night to prove to myself that I'm still attractive. If you love me, you'll let me have this. If you loved me, you wouldn't even think about it. I love you, but I need this. I'm getting older and need to feel attractive. Clarence, who's 10 years younger, has been flirting with me, and I accepted his proposal. It's just one night to boost my confidence. I'm not putting up with this. Remember our wedding vows? If you do this, you're breaking them. It's just one night. Afterward, it'll be back to normal, I promise. Are you stupid, or do you think I am? If you break your vows, it's over. I'll see a lawyer immediately. Don't be an idiot. There will be no divorce. If you try, I'll fight you and make you lose everything. I'll get full custody of the kids and make them hate you. You say you love me, but threaten all this? I do love you, but if you try to divorce me, I'll fight. I just need this one night. And what about in a few years when you feel the same way again? It won't happen again. It's just one night to satisfy my curiosity. Maybe I'll even learn something new to spice up our bed life. If you go through with this, our marriage is over. Cancel the date, and we can try marriage counseling. We'll talk about counseling when I get back tomorrow. She continued getting ready. I changed into jeans and a t-shirt and left the room. Later, she came downstairs in her outfit, clutching a small purse, and checked herself in the mirror by the door. I sat in the living room as a car horn honked outside. He's here. I have to go now. I'll see you in the morning. She leaned in to kiss me, but I turned away, and she kissed the air instead. She frowned at me. Fine. Once you calm down, everything will be back to normal. With that, she turned to leave. I made one last plea. If you walk out that door, it's over. Think twice about throwing away 17 years of marriage. She looked back at me. I'm not throwing anything away. I'll be back and everything will be fine. With that, she opened the door and left. I started crying, mourning the loss of my marriage and the woman I had loved exclusively for 20 years. 17 years of marriage, a year of engagement, and 2 years of dating. I couldn't understand how she could do this to me. She never expressed any dissatisfaction. Our bed life was normal, and she never asked for more. I would have given her anything she wanted. We never fought, just had normal disagreements that we always resolved. I had already decided what to do if she left. Half an hour later, still waiting for her to come back, I finally got up and went to work. She didn't return, so I went upstairs to implement my plan. It wasn't great, but it was all I had. Our house had 4 bedrooms: the master bedroom, Carly's room, Josh's room, and a large guest bedroom with a private bathroom. I moved into the guest room. It took me 2 hours to move everything. I knew the divorce laws in our no-fault state favored the wife, meaning she'd likely get the house, the kids, alimony, and I'd be left with the bills. Settled in my new room, I went to our home office and logged into our online banking. Years ago, I opened an account in my name to buy gifts for her without ruining the surprise. Now, I decided to use it differently. I transferred half of our checking and savings to my personal account. Then, I paid off and canceled all our credit cards and issued new ones in my name. I'd transfer my direct deposits at work on Monday and call our broker to split our investments. Having done what I could, I poured a glass of Jim Beam and went to bed. It was a rough night. The bed felt empty without her, and my mind wouldn't stop racing. I kept thinking about what I could have done differently. Should I have tried to stop her? Confronted the guy with a baseball bat or a weapon? Was it worth going to jail? I barely slept, dozing off now and then. When morning light came through the window, I got up, took a shower, shaved, and dressed. I went downstairs, had breakfast, and read the paper with a couple of cups of coffee. At 9, Kayla returned. I was in my office, looking at apartments for rent. I had already researched attorneys and scheduled an appointment for Monday afternoon. "Good morning, sweetheart. I'm home as promised," she said cheerfully as she entered. I ignored her. My anger had been building all night and morning. I realized I didn't deserve her disrespect, and there was nothing I could have done to stop her. It was her choice entirely. People say you can't stop loving someone suddenly, but you can turn that love into hate. Hate still has emotion. Indifference is the true opposite of love. By this morning, my love for her had turned to hate. I focused on her lack of respect, her threats, and her disregard for my feelings. "Honey, where are you? I'm home, just like I said," she called, searching for me. "There you are," she said, finding me in my office. "I'm back, and things can go back to normal." She reached out to hug and kiss me. I shoved her back. "Keep your filthy lips off me. God only knows what you've touched." Her eyes widened in shock. I'd never spoken to her like that before. "You need to go to the clinic and get a full set of STD tests. I want to see a notarized clean report." Her expression changed from shock to anger. "I'm going to our room to nap. I've had a long night. I hope you've calmed down and will apologize for your rudeness." I couldn't help but smile, anticipating her reaction. "What the hell did you do?" she yelled from upstairs. "Where are your clothes and toiletries?" She barged back into my office. "My things are exactly where they should be." "Your closet and drawers are empty. Your side of the dresser is empty." "Everything is in its place. My clothes are neatly in my new bedroom closet and dresser." "In my bedroom?" "Yes, I moved out of your bedroom. I'll live in my new room until I find an apartment and move out." I decided not to mention the finances yet. Let her figure it out. Her eyes narrowed. "We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to recover, then I'll put everything back to normal." "Not until I get a notarized report that you're free of all diseases," I said, turning back to the computer. I stayed in my office most of the day. The kids came home early, and I wondered how long it would take them to notice something was wrong. I found some promising apartments, filled out forms, and scheduled viewings for Tuesday. I printed out our financial statements for my lawyer on Monday. Although I had no illusions about selling the house, knowing its value might help. I spent the rest of the day researching divorce laws in our state. I knew I'd get screwed over, but needed to understand how badly. "Daddy, dinner's ready," Carly said, peeking through the door. "Okay, sweetie. Thank you." Kayla greeted me in the kitchen with a radiant smile, trying to liquidate me with kindness and show me what I'd lose. She dressed up, did her hair, and spent a lot of time cooking my favorite meal. She offered me a glass of wine and leaned in for a kiss. I pulled away, seeing the pain in her eyes. I poured the wine down the sink, grabbed a tumbler, filled it with ice, and poured some Jim Beam. The kids noticed this as I joined them at the table, ignoring Kayla. Dinner was tense. I kept the kids talking, but it was clear we were in trouble. I didn't eat, just passed the dishes around and sipped my drink. "Dad, aren't you going to eat?" Josh finally asked. "No, not hungry," I replied. After the most awkward dinner ever, I refilled my glass and went back to my office. I didn't help clear the table. Half an hour later, I shut down my computer, grabbed my truck keys, and left for a quiet restaurant dinner. Afterward, I had a few drinks at a bar. When I got home late, I made enough noise closing my room door so Kayla could hear. I locked it and wedged a chair under the handle. She tried to get me to open it for about 5 minutes before giving up. The next morning, I got up early, deciding it was a soccer day. There were 3 games, and I planned to watch them all. There were chores to do, but I ignored them. I wouldn't be living here much longer, so Kayla could handle it. After almost finishing my coffee, I started making an omelet. I was just finishing when Carly walked into the kitchen. "Hi, sweetie. Want an omelet?" I asked. "Sure, Dad. Thanks." She took her juice and sat at the table. Josh came in a few minutes later, and I told him I'd make his omelet next. Carly ate while I cooked Josh's. When I heard Kayla in the hallway, I poured the last cup of coffee and turned off the kettle. She walked in, took a cup from the cupboard, and saw the empty pot. "You couldn't leave me a cup?" she asked. "The pot's right there. You know how to make it." "Never mind." "So, you're making scrambled eggs?" "Made them. Feel free to make your own," I replied, handing Josh's plate. Then, I walked out of the kitchen. Near noon, I was in the living room watching the game. Kayla brought a plate of food and a beer, setting them on the coffee table. "I brought you lunch and a beer, so you won't miss any of the game," she said cheerfully. Without looking at her, I kicked the plate and bottle onto the floor. She stood in shock. During a commercial, I went to the kitchen for a beer. Yes, it was a waste, but I wasn't drinking anything she brought me. I didn't clean up. She brought it. She could clean it. "We need to discuss this," Kayla began. "Shut up. The game is on," I replied. "You need to fix your attitude. The kids have noticed." "They'll notice when I move out." "You're not moving out, and there won't be a divorce," she insisted, walking away. Around noon, Carly and Josh came in together and sat facing me. "Dad, what's going on with you and Mom?" Carly asked. "Your mom and I are getting a divorce. It has nothing to do with you. We both love you. It's just between us." "But why?" Josh asked. "Because she did something I can't accept. Even after I told her how I felt, she did it anyway. She's not remorseful." "You mean her date on Friday night?" Carly asked. "You know about that?" I was surprised. "Yeah, Mom told us you weren't happy about it." "So you know she cheated on me?" "No, she didn't," Josh said. "She told you about it, so it wasn't cheating. She didn't sneak around, and it was only once." "Yes, Dad," Carly added. "She said if you really loved her, you'd let her have that night and move on." "Really? If she loved me, she wouldn't consider sleeping with anyone else." "Come on, Dad. It was just once, and she promised not to do it again. She made a vow to me 17 years ago in front of God and our families to forsake all others until pass away. If she can break that vow, how can I trust her private promises?" "But you vowed to be there for her, in good times and bad," Josh said. "That's right, but she broke her vow, releasing me from mine." "We don't understand why you'd break up the family over one night," Carly said. "Why am I being blamed for what she did? She's not leaving. She wants to move on. You're the one leaving and making a big deal out of it," Carly insisted. After that, things didn't improve. I tried explaining my position, but they wouldn't listen. Kayla had convinced the kids that Mom did what she needed to be happy, and Dad didn't love them enough to accommodate her. They believed my ego was tearing the family apart. They saw it as one night out of 20 years, insignificant compared to 7,305 nights together. When they realized I wouldn't accept their stance, they left, and I watched the rest of the game in peace. As dinner was being prepared, another favorite meal of mine, I ignored it and watched the post-game show. Josh came in and said dinner was ready. I grabbed my keys and headed out. "Where are you going?" "Dinner's ready," Josh asked. "I'm going to the sports bar to watch the game. I'll eat there," I replied. "But Mom fixed." "I'll be back after the game." The sports bar had a good burger and seasoned fries. I had 1 beer per quarter, enough to drive the 5 minutes home. When I returned, everyone was in bed. The plate and bottle were gone from the coffee table, which made me smile. Monday morning, I left early and called my broker from the office to split our investments. I opened a new account and transferred half of our investments into it. Then, I updated my HR records, removing Kayla from my retirement account and listing Carly and Josh as heirs. I also updated my direct deposit to my new account. I informed my boss about the divorce and needing time off. He was supportive. My lawyer confirmed custody would depend on the kid's preference, which didn't look promising based on our conversation. I spent Monday evening at the sports bar watching football, eating tacos. I ignored texts and calls from Kayla, but told Carly where I was. She wasn't happy. When I got home, they all gave me dirty looks. I went to my office, and by the time I went to bed, everyone was asleep. Tuesday morning, I left early before anyone else was up. Work was fine, and I took the day off to look at apartments. I found a nice 2-bedroom place, put down a deposit, and planned to move in on Saturday. I bought a couch, table, and chairs from a thrift store to be delivered Saturday afternoon. I decided to take my current bed and home office items with me. When I got home, they were already eating dinner. They hadn't set a plate for me, which was fine since I wasn't planning to eat with them. I made a huge sandwich, grabbed chips and a beer, and headed to my office. "Dad, why are you being such an idiot?" Carly exclaimed, entering my office. "Your mother cheated on me, showed no respect, and threw it in my face. I made it clear what would happen if she did, and she did it anyway. You can't ruin our family over this. It was just lovemaking." "Carly, imagine your future husband telling you he's going on a date with a younger woman and will spend the night with her. Would you be okay with that?" "I wouldn't like it, but if it was only once and he promised to come back, I'd hope I loved him enough to get over it. If he told me first, it wouldn't seem like cheating." When you say your vows, imagine looking into your fiancé's eyes and telling him you're off to have fun with another man. I turned back to my work. Wednesday evening was an ambush. When I got home, both sets of parents were there. I understood why her parents would be on her side, but I was puzzled that my parents were there too. "Tom," Charles began, "Kayla's mother and I are disappointed in what she did, but you're overreacting. It was just one mistake in 20 years. You have 2 wonderful kids. Don't destroy your family over one incident." "It wasn't a small mistake. It was a planned event. She told me just an hour before, giving me no chance to resist." "Son," Mom intervened, "she didn't cheat. She told you first. She didn't ask. She just told me. Even when I objected, she didn't care. I told her what would happen if she went through with it, and she did it anyway." "Tom," my father said, "I understand your pain and anger, but think of your family. We love you and are here to help you heal. Kayla still loves you and insists she won't do it again. With counseling and effort, you can overcome this. Tearing the family apart isn't the answer. Think of your mother and me. These are our grandchildren, and we'll do whatever it takes to maintain a relationship with them." I was stunned. My parents were on her side, telling me to accept her cheating. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and walked to my bedroom, shutting the door in Kayla's face. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I walked through the living room and out the door without saying a word, ignoring their attempts to talk to me. I drove to the sports bar for dinner and a few beers. When I returned about 4 hours later, the house was quiet and dark. Thursday and Friday were the same. I ignored Kayla, and the kids were still mad at me. Kayla hadn't noticed the credit cards weren't working yet, but she would when she went shopping on Saturday. Friday night, I was in my office sorting through my things, deciding what to take the next day. Kayla entered wearing a see-through nightgown, stockings, garter belt, and heels. She looked amazing. "The kids are sleeping elsewhere tonight. It's time to forget this nonsense and come to bed with me. I need you to take me back." "No, thank you. Besides, I haven't seen the clinic report confirming you're clean." "Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed. Your tantrums aren't helping. Now come on. I'm passionate and need lovemaking." "Not interested. If you don't, I'll call Clarence again." "So what if it's a one-time thing?" "It was a one-time thing, but if you keep rejecting me, you're pushing me to someone else." "Have fun. Let me know if you bring him here so I can leave." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I heard the front door slam and her tires screech as she drove off. I took advantage of the empty house to gather my things. I disassembled the bed and loaded it into the truck along with most of my clothes. I slept on the couch in my office that night. Early the next morning, I went to the leasing office to get my apartment key. It took a while, but I moved everything from the truck into the apartment with help from friendly neighbors. When I got back, the house was still empty. A neighbor's teenage son helped me load my desk and office furniture into the truck. I moved the computer, printer, and accessories, and decided to take the chair too. Either no one came home or they didn't notice my office and spare bedroom were empty. In the evening, my phone rang. It was my daughter. "Daddy, where are you?" "I'm home, honey." "No, you're not. Your office is empty. The bed and dresser are gone from the spare bedroom, and your chair isn't in the living room. Plus, your truck is gone. You're right. I'm not there. I've moved into an apartment. Maybe after the divorce, I'll buy a house, but this will do for now. Geez, Dad. I can't believe you're being so stupid. I thought you loved us. I do love you, sweetheart. Always have and always will. Just not enough to stay with us. I'm not leaving you. You'll still see me as much as you want. I'll still take care of you and your brother. You abandoned us and are destroying the family. Your mother is the one who destroyed the family. I told her what would happen if she went on that date, but she did it anyway. But she thought you loved her enough to get over it. And I thought she loved me enough not to do it. Okay, whatever. She hung up. The divorce was a nightmare. She fought it to the end. Counseling? She wanted me to pay. I refused. I argued she should pay if she needed it. That was one of the few arguments I won. The counselor didn't like me because I told him I was ordered to attend, but didn't have to participate. I endured all 12 sessions before he gave up. She fought over everything, even things she hated, just to make the divorce harder. She limited my time with the kids as much as possible. Eventually, the judge granted the divorce. I had to pay half the mortgage, child support of $2,000 a month, and $1,000 a month in spousal maintenance for 5 years unless she remarried. She moved Clarence in before the divorce was finalized. Half my paycheck went to her. I cashed out investments to buy a small house needing renovation. I got it cheap and moved in with my tools. The house had basic utilities, and I worked on it in the evenings and weekends. Visitation was a disaster. Kayla did everything to prevent it. The kids were always busy or away on my weekends. They had activities or tests on Wednesdays. When I did see them, they treated me with hostility and blamed me for everything. Kayla had turned them against me. I sent gifts, cards, and letters for birthdays and Christmas, but they were returned unopened. I kept sending monthly checks, which were cashed, but I never heard a word. I guess they graduated, but I heard nothing. I informed them of college funds, but got no response. Kayla set my kids against me as she promised. I focused on work in the house, avoiding other activities. I saved a lot of money this way, but it was a hard and lonely time. "Hi, Mom," I said when she answered. "Tom, how are you?" she replied cheerfully. "I'm okay. I haven't heard anything about Thanksgiving. Are you hosting again this year?" There was silence. "Mom, are you there?" I asked. "Well, this is awkward." "Yes, we're hosting, but Kayla, her parents, and the kids are coming. She's bringing her new boyfriend. We thought it would be too awkward if you were here, too. The kids are still mad at you, and having you and Kayla's new man together would stress everyone out. So, you're ditching your own son for Thanksgiving and inviting my ex-wife and her boyfriend instead? We want to stay close to our grandchildren. Besides, this is your fault for not keeping the family together. How about visiting us on Christmas Eve? Your father and I will spend Christmas Day at Kayla's." "Whatever," I muttered, ending the call. I spent Christmas Eve at home watching Die Hard and ignored my mom's calls and texts. I wasn't in the holiday mood, especially after the packages I sent to my kids were returned unopened. 5 years later, I got a wedding announcement. Kayla had married Clarence the weekend after I made my last maintenance payment. Josh turned 18 a year early, so I was done with child support. I was finally free of obligations to my ex-family and celebrated by getting drunk. I wasn't proud of it, but I gave them all my love, and they rejected me. Now, I was focused on moving on with my life. I still had to pay half the mortgage, but my name was on the deed. The divorce allowed Kayla to live there only until the kids graduated high school. With Josh's graduation, I was entitled to half the property's value. I contacted my attorney. The house, initially appraised at $300,000 with $200,000 in equity, was now worth about $500,000 with $450,000 in equity. I was due my half, which would be around $250,000. I wanted the money and also to annoy Kayla. A week later, Kayla called. "Tom, what the hell is going on?" "Not much. Just working and fixing up my house. Why are you calling?" "You idiot. Why did a realtor come to my house to get my signature for a sale? Since both our names are on the title, your signature is needed for the sale." "What sale? I'm not selling this house." "Then write me a check for my half of the equity." "I got the house in the divorce." "No, you got to live there until Josh graduated. Now we can either sell it and split the proceeds, or you can buy out my half." "I'm not giving you $100,000 for a house I own." "Good thing I'm not asking for $100,000. The equity is about $450,000 now, so my half is $225,000. Including all the furniture, let's round it up to $250,000. You're crazy! I'm not giving you a dime, she shouted, hanging up. Yes, I laughed when she hung up. Yes, my lawyer got his cut. But it was worth it to see her face when the judge ruled in my favor a couple of months later. The judge even made her pay her legal fees and mine for bringing a case that should have been settled out of court. The house appraised higher than I expected, including the furniture's value. I got $275,000. They bought me out, mostly using Clarence's money, which later got him in trouble. I fixed up my house and built a decent-sized shop behind it. I bought a 1972 Chevy pickup in bad shape, mainly for the chassis. Over the last year, I took it apart, cleaned it, and repainted it. When the bodywork was done, I worked on the running gear, rebuilding the rear differential, and installing a Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual transmission. I had fun with the engine, a 427 big block, which I found online and had shipped. I took it apart, sent it to a machine shop for modifications, and added a supercharger. I polished the aluminum and chromed the valve covers, making it shine. The first time I drove it, I almost wrecked it. I floored it on the highway, blowing out the rear tires. I learned to take it slow on the gas pedal after that. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a car show and decided to enter. I loaded up the 72 Chevy and drove to the park, registered, and got my spot. I noticed a nice 1968 GTO parked next to me. As I set up my shade structure, chairs, and refrigerator, I saw two attractive red-headed women setting up chairs behind the GTO. One looked my age, and the other was about 10 years old. Importantly, I noticed there was no man with them, and no ring on the older woman's finger. "Good morning. I like your car," I said cheerfully. "Hi, thanks. I like your truck too," said the older one. "Thanks. Have you been to many of these events?" "This is my first time participating. I'm Tom, by the way." "This is our third time. My ex has hosted it before. I'm Marie, and this is my daughter Jenny." "Why don't you two join me in the shade when you're done? I have drinks and could use some tips about these shows." We spent most of the day together, occasionally talking to people about our cars. It was very enjoyable. "No, I didn't win any awards, but I had fun," I said. Marie mentioned, "I divorced my husband 3 years ago because I caught him cheating." "Who was he cheating with?" I asked. "His boss's wife," she replied. "She made a deal. She'd give him all the videos if he signed the GTO over to her. She wanted him to keep his job to pay alimony. It was a double win for her," she said. Jenny joined in, saying she was angry at her father and had nothing to do with him anymore. As the show wound down, I suggested, "How about dinner at Red Lobster nearby?" They agreed. Over dinner, I shared my story. My kids sided with my wife and want nothing to do with me. Jenny was stunned. "She cheated, and they blame you?" "Yes, she turned them against me," I said. Marie put her hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Tom. You don't deserve this." "Thank you, Marie," I replied, changing the subject to something more pleasant. We talked and laughed for another hour, exchanged numbers, and agreed to meet again. As they left, Jenny smiled and gave me 2 thumbs up. The next weekend, I asked Marie out for dinner and dancing. She enthusiastically agreed. "I'd love that," she said. After our 3rd date, I invited them to my house and cooked dinner. "I learned to cook after my divorce," I said, serving lasagna. They seemed to like it. "Your house is nice," Marie said, but I overheard her telling Jenny it needed a feminine touch. I wouldn't have argued. The following weekend, I visited them. Marie's cooking put mine to shame. "Even Kayla wasn't as good," I admitted, apologizing for eating so much. They laughed. "That's the best compliment you can give a cook," Marie said. Jenny was also a good cook. 2 weekends later, I took Marie to dinner and a dance club. During a slow song, we pressed together, swaying to the music, and ended up kissing. It was pretty hot. A few weeks ago, she leaned over and whispered, "Take me home." Surprised, I said, "I thought we were having a great time. Now you want to go home?" She giggled. "No, silly, take me to your house." Relieved, I agreed. Luckily, I had my regular truck, and not the 72, which might not have handled the drive. I went for it. The next morning, I made her breakfast before driving her home. I got another double thumbs up from the red-headed teenager in the window. I proposed, and she said yes. We had a simple ceremony in front of a judge, and they moved into my house. Jenny even started calling me Daddy. Life was wonderful despite occasional disagreements. Jenny and I had our differences too. She was a teenager, and I was the authority figure. Still, she respected me, and her mom loved me as much as I loved her. About a year later, I got an unexpected call from an unknown number. Hello? Hi, Daddy, an excited voice said. Carly? I asked. Yes, Daddy, it's me. I have great news, she said. Really? It's great to hear from you. I'm getting married, she announced. That's wonderful, honey. I'm so happy for you. I want you at my wedding, she said. Of course. It's a great honor to walk my daughter down the aisle. I also have a wedding fund for you. Oh, no. Clarence is paying for the wedding, and he'll be walking me down the aisle. Since it would be awkward for you and Mom, you won't be in the front pew. But I still want you there. Clarence? The man your mother cheated on me with? Did she marry him? Dad, I'm trying to rebuild our relationship. After you left, she and Clarence fell in love and got married. It's your fault. If you hadn't left, they wouldn't have continued dating. Clearly, you still think your mother did nothing wrong. I can't support a marriage I believe will fail. You might cheat on your husband like your mother did, and you took my last honor and gave it to the man who broke up our family. You're showing how selfish you've become. Fine, don't expect to see your grandchildren if you act like this. I don't want anything to do with them. Really, Dad? Mom's right. You really are a fool. Click. That was the last thing I heard from my daughter as I hung up. So much for a relationship with her or Josh. It hurt that they still blamed me for their mother's actions. I put my phone away and went to work on the 1963 Chevy pickup I had pulled from a field. I wanted it to be more drivable than my 72, with a rebuilt 350 engine slightly more powerful than the original. I didn't notice Jenny grab my phone. I didn't even know she was home. I saw my phone ringing from an unknown number, one of many calls during wedding planning. Hello? Hi, is this Carly Williams? Yes, what can I do for you? You can stop calling my dad and being a cow to him. He's the best man I know, and he doesn't deserve a spoiled strumpet like you reminding him of the past. You and your family are a waste of air. Who are you? I'm Jenny Williams, your sister. My mom married your ex-dad, and he adopted me. I love him and respect him, unlike you. Your mom disrespected her husband and slept with another guy, and you don't seem to care. My biological father cheated on my mom, and she kicked him out. If my mom had cheated on my dad, I'd help him throw her out. Your dad is decent and compassionate. I'm thinking of sending your mom a thank you card for letting him go. Oh, and you can tell your grandparents they have another granddaughter, but I don't want anything to do with people who rejected their own son for a cheating strumpet and her traitorous offspring. When you say your vows, think about your husband cheating on you and call me so I can laugh. Have a crappy life, sis. She hung up. I stared at my phone in shock. First, I learned my father got married without telling us. Then I found out I had a younger sister. I couldn't shake the thought that she looked a lot like me before Mom told Josh and me that Dad was leaving over something small. At first, I thought Dad must have had a good reason and considered living with him. But then Mom explained she just needed a small thing to restore her strength. It was just one short period compared to their long time together. Mom was willing to work things out, but Dad wouldn't even try. He was the one leaving and breaking us apart. I couldn't believe how rude Jenny was to me. She didn't give me a chance to explain that Dad abandoned us and Mom was trying to move on. It was a one-time event, insignificant in their long relationship. And yet she called me vile names without knowing me. Why was Dad so upset? Of course, Clarence was walking me down the aisle. He'd been there for me for years. I hadn't talked to Dad since Josh and I told him how angry we were about him leaving. Besides, Clarence was paying almost $20,000 for my wedding. I couldn't imagine how little Dad had set aside. Half an hour later, when my mom and grandmothers came back from shopping, I was still upset about those calls. Honey, what's wrong? Mom asked. I told Dad about the wedding and invited him. I thought he'd want to be there and maybe we could rebuild our relationship. Oh, that's wonderful, exclaimed Grandma Williams. Is he coming? We haven't heard from him since he called about Thanksgiving years ago. I sighed. No, he got mad when I said Clarence would walk me down the aisle and that it would be awkward for him to sit with Mom and Clarence. That's too bad. I thought he'd gotten over his pig-headedness by now, Grandma said. Well, it gets worse. I found out I have a half-sister, I added. What? They all said in unison. Yes, a girl named Jenny Williams called after Dad hung up. Apparently he married her mom and adopted her. She wasn't nice on the phone. The nicest thing she said was thanking my mom for being stupid, or she wouldn't have such a great dad. I recounted both phone calls to them. They were shocked by the anger from Dad and Jenny. Tom got married and we weren't invited. He didn't even tell us, Grandma whispered. I have another granddaughter. My wedding day finally arrived. I thought briefly about my father and felt sad he wouldn't be there, but it was my happy day. I was marrying the man I loved. Clarence took my hand and we walked down the aisle to the wedding march. I was beyond happy, surrounded by friends and family. Josh was one of Bobby's groomsmen. Tears of joy filled my eyes. Bobby smiled at me from the altar, and Mom looked at me with pride. Clarence lifted my veil, kissed my cheek, and said, Congratulations, baby girl. He handed me to Bobby. When the priest asked, Who gives this bride away? Clarence replied, Her mother and I. It felt off, but I couldn't figure out why. As the ceremony began, I repeated my vows, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. I couldn't continue. I remembered Jenny's words and imagined Bobby with another woman, then him as a broken man if I cheated. I understand now, I said. Bobby looked concerned. I felt a weight lift off me and smiled. I finally get it, I told Bobby. That's great, Carly. But what did you realize? Everything, I replied, then got serious. Bobby, do you really love me? Of course I love you. How can you ask that? I have to ask because I can't marry you today. The audience gasped. We'll still get married, just not today. This is wrong, and I have to make it right. I only want to get married once. For life. Baby, what's wrong? Bobby, I love you. I will marry you, but I need to explain and make things right first. We'll reschedule and plan our wedding again. You're not leaving me at the altar, are you? No, you should come with me. Everyone, I'm sorry, but we can't do this today. We're not canceling, just postponing. We'll let you know the new date. If you don't want to come, we understand. But think of the story you'll tell. The reception hall is ready. Everything's paid for. So enjoy the food, drinks, and dancing. Clarence will cover the bill. I took Bobby's hand and headed back down the aisle. Mom and Clarence blocked my exit. Clarence yelled about the money he'd spent and demanded I repay him. Mom asked, Carly, what are you doing? I'm correcting a mistake I made years ago. What mistake? Listening to you instead of supporting Dad. The mistake of blaming him for the breakup when it was your fault for cheating. Carly, I'm your mother. Speak to me with respect. Respect? Once a cheater, always a cheater. Carly, how dare you? How dare I? I realized today what a horrible person you are. I saw how much it would hurt if Bobby cheated on me, just like you hurt Dad. I guess Dad was a good role model after all, but you weren't. What do you mean? She asked, fear in her eyes. Do you think I don't know about your workouts with Jim Davis at his apartment or your sessions with Carlos, the pool guy? How about the landscaping crew? I've got video footage of your affairs. And tipping Mario, your barber, with a fellation. At least Clarence doesn't have to worry about you cheating with your boss since he is your boss. And don't forget Alan Morris, your neighbor. Mom's eyes flicked to Clarence, who looked utterly shocked. I continued, Clarence, I swear I'll repay the money you spent on this wedding with the same commitment my mother has to her vows. Then I pulled Bobby down the aisle and stopped to talk to the videographer. He had captured everything and handed me a copy of the video. I signed an authorization form to post it on YouTube, hoping it would go viral. Bobby and I ran to the parking lot. He had driven his car with our bags in the trunk. We planned to move them to the limo, but now we just got in his car. I knew Dad would like Bobby, especially when the 440-cylinder engine of his 1969 Challenger roared to life. It wasn't a GM, but it was still a beast. Where are we going? He asked as we sped out of the parking lot. Head west on 156. I'll put the address in Waze, I replied, working my phone. It wasn't hard to find. I knew the town he lived in, and a quick search of real estate records gave me the address. He was about 2 hours away. I hoped he'd be home when we arrived. We didn't stop to change clothes. I was on a mission and didn't want to waste time. It's unusual to open your door to a woman in a wedding dress and a man in a tuxedo. If you were a priest at a church, it might happen occasionally. But I'm not a priest, nor do I live in a church. The bigger surprise was recognizing my daughter, who had made it clear she didn't want to see me. Today was her wedding day, so why was she here instead of at the church, reception, or on her honeymoon? Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute, please? She asked softly. Still stunned, I stepped back and let them in, gesturing toward the living room where Marie and Jenny were. They looked shocked. Oh, Carly, this is my wife Marie and our daughter Jenny. Jenny, Marie, this is Carly. I'm sorry, but I don't know who the guy with her is. Oh, Dad, this is Bobby Jensen, Carly introduced. Bobby, This is my dad, Tom Williams, his wife Marie, and my sister Jenny. Fiancé? I thought you just got married a couple of hours ago, I said, confused. That's what I need to talk to you about. I can't do it today. I can't get married unless Daddy walks me down the aisle. Daddy, I finally understand. You were right. I'm sorry for blaming you. It was Mom who gave up on us, not you. I'm sorry for everything I said and did. You didn't deserve any of it. I was young and stupid and listened to the wrong people. Please forgive me and let me back into your life. I really want to marry Bobby, but I need you to walk me down the aisle. I should have been focusing on other things, but I couldn't ignore the scene unfolding. I was glad Carly realized I wasn't the bad guy and wanted me back in her life, but I had to know more. So, Carly, did something happen at the wedding? You're wearing a wedding dress and Bobby's in a tux. Were you really at the wedding? She looked at herself, then at Bobby. Yes, we were halfway through the ceremony when I had an epiphany. Here, she said, handing me a disc. Maybe you should watch it while Bobby and I change. Bobby grabbed their suitcase from the car, and Marie took Carly to a bedroom to change. Meanwhile, I set up a video player connected to the big screen. When Carly and Bobby were ready, Marie joined me, and I pressed play. It started like a normal wedding ceremony. The groomsmen escorted the bridesmaids down the aisle, then separated at the altar. Bobby entered with the priest, then the ring bearer and flower girl. Finally, Clarence walked Carly down the aisle. Everything was typical until Carly started saying her vows. She suddenly found it hard to speak and got stuck on one word. She did it. I can't believe it hit her so hard, whispered Jenny to herself. I was about to ask Jenny what she meant when Carly stopped her vows and changed everything. The video showed her stopping the wedding and confronting her mom, revealing her increased cheating since marrying Clarence. By the time the video ended, Carly and Bobby had changed clothes and returned to the living room. I couldn't go through with it. Looking into Bobby's eyes, I realized how much it would hurt him if I did to him what Mom did to you. I finally understood what forsaking all others meant and saw how Mom had broken that vow. She dishonored you, and I dishonored you by not giving you the place of honor you deserve. I realized that if I wanted my vows to have meaning, I needed you to walk me down the aisle, not Mom and Clarence. Carly smiled and looked at Jenny. I need my little sister as a bridesmaid. Your words woke me up. How can I get married without you by my side? We talked for hours. Jenny had gotten Carly's number from my phone and called her right after I went to the workshop. As it got late, I asked Carly and Bobby to stay in the guest bedroom. Throughout the evening, Carly received several calls. She ignored Clarence and Kayla, but talked to friends who were enjoying the reception. Clarence couldn't cancel the reception, so he showed up to find people taking advantage of the open bar and food. Josh sent Carly a video of Clarence and Kayla arguing, with Clarence yelling cheating strumpet frequently. Their relationship seemed to be ending too. Josh canceled his reservations but paid a penalty. Carly and Bobby stayed with us all week since they had already taken time off for their honeymoon. I reconnected with Carly and got to know Bobby better. Though he initially believed the lies told by my ex-wife and kids, he warmed up to me after learning the truth. Showing him my store and projects helped, as we both appreciated each other's cars. By midweek, a new wedding date was set for the same venue a year later. This time, I would walk Carly down the aisle and pay for the wedding, with Marie and Jenny helping out. Carly and Bobby updated the wedding party, excluding Kayla and Clarence. Over the next few months, Carly and I rebuilt our relationship. Bobby and I bonded over car shows, and Jenny joined in with her 74 Firebird. Carly and Bobby visited us regularly, and even Josh came by a few times. Though it was harder with Josh due to his closeness to his mother, we rebuilt some of our relationship, partly for Carly's sake. He also brought news from home. By the way, things between Kayla and Clarence fell apart. Clarence moved out and filed for divorce due to irreconcilable differences, not infidelity, so the harsh penalties of their prenup didn't apply. He aimed for a quick and easy split. Fortunately for Clarence, the prenup stated that all his premarital property was exempt from division. Kayla would get half of the property acquired during the marriage, which wasn't much, mainly the house and about $50,000. Clarence tried to claim part of the house, but had no proof. Although he used his money to buy out my share after the divorce, he couldn't prove it. He took a business loan for his company to get the money, but didn't document the expenses. Since Kayla owned the house before they married and never put Clarence's name on the title, she refused to discuss it. Clarence ended up paying off the loan without getting any return. By the time he realized this, it was too late to file an infidelity complaint. Rumors of Kayla's infidelity spread, damaging her reputation. Friends distanced themselves and invitations dried up. Her financial situation worsened without Clarence's support. Clarence learned an expensive lesson. He lost hundreds of thousands buying out my half of the house, another $28,000 on the wedding, and had to pay Kayla $50,000 in the divorce. He also faced humiliation. Kayla told everyone he had a small member and didn't know how to use it. She spread gossip that he refused to perform mouth lovemaking on her. This destroyed his social life, turning him into a recluse. "Ready, Daddy?" my oldest daughter asked. "No father is ever ready to let his daughters go, but I'm honored to do it for you," I replied. The doors opened, music filled the church, and I proudly walked my daughter down the aisle. I glanced at the fourth row where my ex-wife sat, and then at the front row where my wife Marie sat. After giving my daughter away, I whispered, "Love you, baby," kissed her on the cheek, and handed her to Bobby. I joined Marie in the front row. Carly practically shouted, "To have and to hold in sickness and in health, in good times and bad." With a bright smile, she finished her vows. The ceremony was beautiful, and the applause was loud when they kissed. At the reception, I noticed Kayla sitting off to the side, unhappy and drinking from the open bar. Clarence wasn't invited. My duties were done. I walked my daughter down the aisle, gave a toast, danced the father-daughter dance, and then danced with my wife. I sat next to Marie and watched my youngest daughter dance with one of the many guys vying for her attention. "May I ask your husband for this dance?" I heard a familiar voice ask my wife. Marie and I turned to face my ex-wife. Marie stared for a moment before responding. "Just return him to where you found him." She looked at me. "I trust you, but not her." I led Kayla to the floor as a slow song started playing. I kept my distance and tried not to pull her close. After a bit, she spoke. "You were supposed to give me that one night. We were supposed to forget about it and move on. Tonight should have been just us. You shouldn't have left that night. You should have known I wouldn't accept you cheating on me no matter how many times you did it." "I didn't cheat. I told you before I did it. I didn't sneak around." "Whether you told me or not is irrelevant. The fact is, you had lovemaking with someone else. Besides, I told you not to do it, but you did it anyway." "I never wanted this. I just wanted one night, and then we could be together forever. You know you're the only man I've ever loved. I never loved him. The lovemaking wasn't even that great." "Then why did you marry him?" "Because you divorced me." "I didn't love him, but I didn't want to be alone. I thought I could love him, but I couldn't get over you. I did those nasty things because I was angry you left. I still loved you, but you wouldn't talk to me after that night. I realized you were all I needed. So why did you cheat on him?" "Because he was terrible in bed. He wouldn't take advice, wouldn't go down on me, and I stopped giving him fellations. When I couldn't take it anymore, I found other guys who could satisfy me. I didn't know Carly knew. I never thought she'd leave me like that. I feel sorry for you. We had a great marriage, but you ruined it for one night of mediocre lovemaking." "I don't think there's any chance," I laughed. "Even if I wasn't married now, you destroyed any possibility of us getting back together by turning our kids against me. I'm happily married now with another daughter I love. The best I can offer is being civil at events with our children and grandchildren." Thankfully, the song ended. I didn't speak to her again that evening. She couldn't afford the mortgage, so she sold the house and moved into a small apartment. The sale proceeds were enough for her to live on if she was careful. She dated occasionally, but never had another serious relationship. Clarence ended up living alone, too. Carly and Bobby had a long, loving marriage with 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. Josh married a nice girl, and they had 2 daughters. As far as I know, neither cheated on their spouse. Some people think I should have sought revenge on Kayla and Clarence, but I chose to move forward and live my life well. The best revenge is a life well lived, and I let karma handle the rest. Clarence and Kayla didn't burn, but they didn't escape unscathed. I had nothing to do with their downfall, but I still feel good. I have my wife, daughter, and 2 other children back in my life. I'm surrounded by people who love me and have a good life. "Ready, Daddy?" my daughter asked. No father is ever ready to let his daughter go, but I'm honored to do it for you, I replied. The doors opened, music filled the church, and I proudly led my daughter down the aisle. My wife smiled from her place of honor in the front row. I joined her after fulfilling this last important duty for my daughter. "Don't worry, Dad, I'm going to do it right," Jenny assured me.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My name is Raymond Griffin, and I'm 36 years old. I have a degree in engineering, but years ago, I decided to follow my passion and opened a motorcycle repair and customization business. I'm not rich, but I do all right. I'll never have everything I want, but I'm content with what I need. I pride myself on being a loyal and trustworthy friend, and I wouldn't want to be my enemy. I've got a side to me that I'm not proud of, a mean streak I never fully understood until my time in the service. But my wife, Renee, has always brought out the gentler side of me. I could never imagine directing that darker side toward her. I've always believed a man's word should be his bond, that actions speak louder than words, and that you should treat others the way you want to be treated. Renee is my wife. She's the cousin of my best friend, Charlie. We grew up together in a tough neighborhood, but we made it through and built a life for ourselves. Renee and I have been married for 9 years, and we have a 6-year-old son, Jake. She's beautiful, stubborn, and full of energy, while I'm more laid-back and easygoing. Our different personalities have balanced each other out over the years. She could make friends anywhere, while I've always been content with just a few close ones. Most of the time, I didn't need more than her. I love her more than I can put into words, and seeing her happy is what gives me the most joy. It's also made her both my strength and my weakness. Coming home to her every day is what I live for. The issues in our marriage began when Renee made a new friend, Linda, who had recently gone through a divorce. Linda and her boyfriend, Alistair, had just moved into the neighborhood. When I first met Alistair, he gave me an unsettling vibe. His eyes were cold, and I felt uncomfortable around him, as if he had a hidden agenda. He didn't seem to have a job, but always drove an expensive car and appeared to have money, which raised some red flags for me. I tried to warn Renee about him, but she didn't see the same issues I did. Despite my concerns, Renee insisted on inviting them over for a barbecue. I tend to avoid controlling situations like this, as I've always respected her judgment and trusted her to make her own decisions about friends. Linda and Alistair, however, felt different to me. I'd occasionally take long lunches at home just to enjoy some private time with Renee while our son, Jake, was at school. We'd often take full advantage of our time together, like we were still in the honeymoon phase of our relationship. Our intimacy was a constant, and I found myself unable to keep my hands off her, even after all these years. She had gained a bit of weight since we first got married, but to me, it only made her more attractive. Renee had been struggling ever since her miscarriage 3 months ago. She wasn't open about her pain, refusing to see a doctor about her depression. It was a difficult time for both of us, and I tried my best to stay strong for the both of us, but nothing seemed to help. I kept waiting for her to open up to me, as communication had always been the foundation of our marriage. But now, she barely spoke to me at all. I tried not to feel resentful, though it was hard when I saw that she had no trouble talking to Linda. One day, I decided to bring home a yellow rose, something I had done for her since our first date. It had always been a small gesture, but it meant a lot to her. The rose was my way of reminding her how much I cherished her. But when I got home, she wasn't there. That wasn't like her. She usually made sure to run any errands after 1 o'clock, so she wouldn't miss me if I came home for lunch. Her usual routine had been disrupted, and that left me feeling uneasy. I stood there, holding the rose, my instincts telling me something was wrong. The knot in my stomach grew tighter. I began to suspect that Linda was involved somehow, that her presence might be affecting Renee's attitude and behavior. After a long, tense afternoon at the shop, I called Renee's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. The feeling that something was off only intensified. As I made my way home, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. We needed to talk. I couldn't just stand by and watch my marriage fall apart. When I pulled my bike into the garage, I instinctively touched the hood of Renee's car. It was still warm. She hadn't been home for long. When Renee saw me, she had a distant, almost vacant look in her eyes. I'd noticed it more and more lately. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice lacking its usual warmth. "Renee, sit down. We need to talk," I said firmly. "And where's Jake?" "He's at your mom's. I asked her to pick him up after school. Why didn't you pick him up yourself? What was so important that you couldn't do that?" "Can it wait, honey? I still need to get dinner ready," she replied, her voice tinged with nervousness. "No, it can't wait. What I have to say is important. Now sit down and answer me," I insisted. She sat on the edge of the couch, her eyes cautious. "What's wrong, Raymond? You seem upset. Where were you at lunch today? Did you notice the yellow rose on the table? And why didn't you answer your phone?" I asked, my frustration rising. "I had a few errands to run. I guess I forgot my phone. What's the big deal?" "Yes, I saw the rose. I just haven't had a chance to put it in water yet. I'm sorry I missed you today, she said, but I could see the lie in her eyes. Renee, you're lying to me, I said, my tone sharp. You're not good at this. Now, tell me the truth. Were you with Linda this afternoon? I know you just got home. What were you doing all day? She couldn't meet my gaze, and it felt like I was talking to a stranger. My anger mixed with fear, knowing my life was shifting in ways I didn't understand. You don't trust me? She asked, almost pleading. I don't trust Linda and Alistair, I replied. I've told you that before. I'm sorry, Raymond, she said, her voice soft. Yes, I was with Linda. I didn't want to tell you because I know you don't like her. But she's my friend, and she understands me. I think she's using you, I replied, frustration building. I'm not sure what she's after, but I can tell you it's not going to be good for either of us. I've seen her type before. Raymond, that's not fair. She's really not a bad person, Renee insisted. I trust my instincts, I said, my voice firm. They've never steered me wrong. Well, since it seems like you'll just accuse me of lying no matter what, my trust in you has been deeply shaken, I continued. She's not your friend. There's something wrong with her. Was Alistair there too? Don't lie to me again. Yes, she answered softly. Yes, what? I felt my blood start to boil. He was there too, she muttered, her eyes fixed on the floor. What were you doing there all day? I drank some wine, we talked, and played some cards. That's all we did. Honey, I swear, she said, but I could see the discomfort in her. How many afternoons have you spent there? I pressed, sensing she was avoiding the truth. I don't know. A few, she replied, clearly uncomfortable, but I suspected it was more than just a few. Since you met her, you've been acting different. I don't even know who you are anymore. I know you've been struggling, but please, let me help. You've been distant, and it's affecting Jake and me. You're spending all this time with her, and it's hurting us. You're smart enough to see that, Renee. If you still care about our marriage, you have to listen to me. Please, respect how I feel about this. She stiffened, and I could feel the tension building in the room. There was a flicker of anger in her eyes, but also something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I don't need any help, Raymond, she said, her voice defensive. She told me you might say something like this. I've been bored. I get lonely sitting around here all day. You never wanted me to work, and you never want to go anywhere. I need some excitement in my life. You just want to control me. I'm getting older, and it feels like life is passing me by. I thought you were happy with your life, I said, my tone softening. Apparently, I was wrong. If it's excitement you're after, I'll try anything, just as long as it doesn't involve a third person. I'm trying to protect you and our marriage. You're being controlled, but it's not by me. It sounds like you've been listening to the wrong influences. I know I can be a bit predictable, but you're all the excitement I need. I work hard to support us, but if a job will make you happy, then go for it. I'll support whatever makes you happy. If you want me to take you out more, all you had to do was ask. I love seeing you dressed up, and I'm always proud to show off my beautiful, sexy wife to the world. I'm not your property, Raymond. It's my life. I can choose my own friends. I don't belong to you, she retorted, her voice sharp. What? I said, stunned. She acted as if she hadn't heard a word I said. Her response felt rehearsed, as if it had been planted in her mind long before. Since the moment I asked your father for your hand in marriage, I've been your man. When you married me, you became my wife, not just any wife. We belong to each other, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others. Do you remember those vows, Renee? You've always been an amazing wife and mother, so what's going on with you now? You know I'd step in front of a bullet for you. I love you, and I need you to understand that. I've never told you what to do, but right now, I'm telling you, stay away from her. Now, go pick up our son. I'm stepping out for a while. Think about this while I'm gone. When I return, I expect you to have figured things out. I won't tolerate any more disrespect. I needed to clear my head, so I went for a long ride on my bike. It usually helped me feel better, but this time, it only seemed to carry the weight of a looming storm. When I returned home, Renee had dinner ready, but she was unusually quiet, and we ate in silence. Jake, sensing something was off, looked at her. What's the matter, Mommy? You look sad, he asked, his innocent words tugging at my heart. I'm fine, Jake. Mommy's just a little tired. I just need some rest, that's all. Don't worry, she said, forcing a smile. Okay, Mommy. Daddy said we can go to the big park on Saturday. I like that park. We can have fun and go swimming. That will be nice, Jake, Renee replied, her tone lacking its usual enthusiasm. After dinner, she retreated to our bedroom. I stayed up with Jake, watching Monsters Incorporated for the 21st time, then read him 5 of his favorite stories before he finally drifted off to sleep. When I entered our bedroom, Renee was lying on the bed in my favorite sexy lingerie. I hadn't seen it in a long time. Despite the tension I was feeling, my desire for her was immediate. I needed her, and I wanted to show her just how much. She gazed at me, her eyes filled with passion. But there was something else, a sadness, perhaps. I felt the need to hold her, to love her, and to wipe away whatever was causing her pain. Without hesitation, I undressed and joined her in bed. We made love, but then I felt her tears against my cheek. "What's the matter, honey? Did I hurt you?" I asked, my voice filled with confusion. "No, my love, you didn't hurt me," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Forgive me, please. I love you so much. I love you too, honey." "More than you know," I said, unsure of what she was really apologizing for, but knowing it wasn't the time to ask. We'd have time for that later. I held her close, wanting her to feel safe and protected, and soon, we both drifted into a deep sleep. The next morning, I woke up feeling full of love for the woman next to me, but her plea for forgiveness was gnawing at me. I didn't fully understand what she meant. Was there something she hadn't told me? Other than lying to me, what had she done? That question lingered in my mind, a bad sign, but it wasn't something I could face right then. I needed to talk to someone. So, after work the next day, I went to see my buddy, Charlie. He was always there for me, ready to listen, and I needed his perspective. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me. The cloud of doom still hung over me like a thick fog. Charlie greeted me with his usual energy. "Raymond, how the hell are you, buddy? Long time no see. Come on in. Have a seat. You want a beer?" "I've got some on ice," he said, his smile wide as always. "You look like your dog died," he added, reading my mood instantly. "What's up?" "Yeah, a beer would be good," I muttered, sinking into the chair. Before I could open up to Charlie, his wife, Dorothy, and her sister, Kathleen, walked in, both flashing warm smiles. They looked like twins, even though they were 2 years apart. With their big green eyes, flawless skin, and long hair that cascaded down to their shoulders, they were both stunning. Their figures were the kind of thing men only dreamed about. Charlie was definitely a lucky guy. I'd known both women for years, and I could never quite figure out why Kathleen wasn't married. She was smart, kind, and incredibly sexy. If I weren't already married to Renee, Kathleen would have been high on my list. "Hey ladies, it's good to see you both," I said, giving them each a hug and a kiss on the cheek. "Raymond, we don't see you and Renee enough. Are you guys hiding from us?" Dorothy teased. But then she noticed the smile that had faded from my face when she mentioned Renee. "Are you two doing okay? I saw your face when I said her name. I hope you don't mind me asking. We care about you both a lot. If there's anything we can do to help, you know where to find us." Her concern caught me off guard. I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries, but Dorothy's caring tone made me feel like I could share. "Actually, I came here to talk to Charlie, but since you and Kathleen are here, maybe you can offer some insight. You two seem to understand women far better than Charlie and I. Things at home aren't going well," I admitted, finally resigning to spill the beans. The two women settled onto the love seat across from Charlie and me, their eyes curious and attentive. I let out a deep breath and began to share the mess that had become my life. "It comes down to this," I began, struggling to find the words. "Renee's been spending a lot of time with our new neighbors, Linda and Alistair, and lately, she's been acting like she's losing her mind. One minute she's warm and loving, and the next, she's a completely different person. She's been distant, moody, like I don't even know who she is anymore. I've noticed this glazed look in her eyes, like she's high on something. And the thing is, Renee's never been into drinking, and she's always been against using drugs. She's been lying to me about where she's going, what she's doing. I know Linda's involved in this somehow. Renee told me I don't own her, that she's bored with me, that I'm controlling her, among other things. She cries for no reason I can understand. Ever since her miscarriage, she hasn't been the same, and she won't accept help from me or anyone. It's like these neighbors have cast some kind of spell on her. But I know she loves me. I can feel it, but I just can't make sense of what's happening. I don't know what to do anymore." I trailed off, the weight of it all pressing down on me. My pain, frustration, anger, and anxiety felt too much to carry, so I hung my head. The room fell silent as they absorbed what I had just shared. No one knew what to say. Dorothy and Kathleen exchanged glances, their faces filled with sympathy. Damn, bro. Charlie finally broke the silence, his voice thick with disbelief. This doesn't sound like Renee at all. I don't even know where to start. Something's seriously off here. I can't imagine her cheating on you, man. This is so out of character for her. None of this makes any sense. I wish I could find a man who treats me the way you've always treated her, Kathleen said, her voice tinged with a quiet longing. I've always been a little jealous of your marriage. I know there's nothing you wouldn't do for her. She's very foolish to not protect what she has with you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't sure how to respond, but it was clear Kathleen's feelings for me went beyond friendship. Dorothy, noticing the tension, leaned in with genuine concern. Do you want me to talk to her, Raymond? We've always been pretty close. Do you think it would help? I sighed, not feeling confident that Renee would open up to anyone, especially not at this point. I don't think so, Dorothy. You could try, but I'm not sure it'll make a difference. Kathleen wasn't finished, though. It's obvious to me that these people she's been hanging out with aren't good for her, she said, her voice firm. What do you know about them? I leaned back in my chair, feeling the frustration boiling up again. Not much. They moved into the neighborhood about 3 months ago. I don't trust either of them. They give me the creeps. Linda gets all in my face every time I see her, flirting right in front of Renee. She acts like a total 304, and her boyfriend, Alistair, is a piece of slime. He reminds me of a vulture. Honestly, it'd be hard to find worse company. I don't understand why Renee's involved with them at all. I have this feeling they're into swapping mates, and I don't share my woman. The thought of it makes me sick. Renee knows that. I paused for a moment, then added, Dorothy, I need your brother to check this guy out. Can you get him to run a background on Linda and Alistair? He's a detective, right? He can get the info fast. Dorothy nodded, understanding the urgency. Sure, Raymond. He'd be glad to help you. Is there anything else you need? I handed her the license plate number and their address. That should be enough for now. Thanks, Dorothy. We'll have the information for you soon, bro, Charlie said, his voice steady but serious. In the meantime, go home and stay close to Renee. Give her a hug from all of us. Don't worry, we've got your back. I felt a slight weight lift off my chest. Talking about everything helped, even just a little. At least now, I didn't feel so alone in this. The next morning, Charlie called. I could hear the gravity in his voice as soon as I picked up. It's not good, Raymond, he said, his tone grim. This guy's name is Ronald Brack. He's got a long rap sheet. He's spent a good chunk of his life in prison. Drug distribution, aggravated robbery, larceny, felonious assault, pandering. A real piece of shit. Right now, he's on parole for carrying a concealed weapon. Linda's been arrested for prostitution and larceny, but some slick lawyer got her off. They're bad news, but Renee's gotten herself tangled up with some real bottom feeders. From what you've told me, I'm afraid Alistair is setting her up to be one of his hookers. He's probably been trying to corrupt her, if he hasn't already. I hope you love her enough to deal with this. She never had a chance against those two wolves. Go home and handle this, Raymond. And be careful when confronting Alistair. That guy's dangerous. He's got no conscience. I felt the rage burning in me, hot and fast. He's not as dangerous as me, I growled, my fists tightening. I'd love nothing more than to tear him apart. They'll regret ever stepping into my life. Believe that. The cold clarity of the situation was slowly seeping in, but it was hard to focus. The thought of Renee, my wife, the woman I loved, being touched by those scum, made my blood boil. The anger was so overwhelming, I could barely think straight. I knew I had to act, but I was too consumed with fury to think things through properly. I rushed home to find that Renee was not there. I knew where she was. I loaded my semi-automatic Colt .45, took off the safety, put it in the small of my back, and headed for Linda's house. Renee's car was in the driveway. I slipped in through an open patio door. When I reached their bedroom, my heart stopped. I stood stunned as I saw my loving wife having sex with Alistair. The room was smelly, and there was a pile of white powder on the nearby dresser. Time stood still as my heart broke into a million pieces. I felt disgust for the only woman I had ever loved and rage at the two people who had destroyed my world. Eventually, they realized I was there. Renee shrieked and started crying while Alistair smiled at me. Don't stop on my account. She's your now, damaged goods. I growled, looking at Renee, who was crying and desperately trying to cover herself. She's been mine for a while now, Raymond, old boy. Put away your ego and go with it. Feel free to take Linda over here. You piece of trash. I wouldn't touch your diseased hooker with a stick. I hope you Your hooker and my ex-wife rot in hell. No, Raymond, they made me do it. I foolishly had sex with Linda. I didn't know Alistair recorded the whole thing. He said if I didn't let them continue to use me that they would tell you. I didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Raymond. Please, don't hate me, please. Begged Renee. She's mine now, Raymond. You might as well take me up on my offer. Like you said, she's damaged goods now. Before he could react, I was already striking him hard, delivering blow after blow to his face. His jaw shattered, and I followed up with a punishing attack to his midsection before driving my knee into his groin. He crumpled to the floor, groaning in pain. As I turned to leave, he pulled a gun and pointed it at me. I heard Renee scream, "No," as she tried to stop him, but he jerked away from her and shot her in the chest. That moment gave me just enough time to grab my .45 and put a bullet through his head. The force of the shot splattered brains and blood across Linda, who was standing behind him. She screamed in horror, frantically trying to clean the mess off of her. I rushed to Renee, but it was too late. The bullet had pierced her heart. I cradled her head in my arms, tears streaming down my face as I mourned the loss of my wife. Renee, what have you done? What have you done? When the police arrived, they arrested Linda for possession of narcotics with intent to sell and clear me of all charges. As I stood over my wife's coffin, I was filled with confusion. She had betrayed my trust and the vows we made, yet she had given her life to save mine. Despite everything, I would miss her. My love for her hadn't died with her. It was tangled up with the hatred for what she had done. After the funeral, Kathleen took my arm, saying, "Jake is with your mother, Raymond. Come home with me. You shouldn't be alone now. I know what you need. Let me help you." That day, a new chapter of my life began. After the funeral, Raymond struggled with the weight of his grief, torn between the love he had for Renee and the anger he felt for her betrayal. For weeks, he kept to himself, reflecting on everything that had happened, wrestling with the anger and sadness that often kept him up at night. Kathleen, though, never left his side. She understood his pain in a way no one else could. Having always been a supportive friend, she now stepped in as a quiet source of comfort. She didn't push him, but always made sure he knew she was there. Whether it was bringing him dinner, sitting in silence as he vented, or simply taking Jake off his hands for a while so he could have some space to think. Over time, Raymond began to realize that Kathleen wasn't just offering him a shoulder to lean on. She was offering him something more, someone who truly understood him. Her strength, kindness, and unwavering support started to chip away at the walls he'd built around his heart. They spent more time together, and Raymond saw a different side to Kathleen. She had always been tough and independent, but now there was an undeniable softness about her that pulled him in. As the days passed, Raymond began to feel something stirring inside him, a kind of hope he hadn't felt in a long time. He had started to heal, and he realized it was because of Kathleen. Months later, Raymond took her hand one evening as they stood by the lake, watching the sunset. "Kathleen, I don't know what I'd have done without you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved me, and I can't imagine my life without you anymore. Will you marry me?" Kathleen smiled softly, her eyes glistening with tears, and nodded. "Yes, Raymond, I will." Their wedding was a quiet affair, just close friends and family, a ceremony filled with love, healing, and the promise of a future together. Raymond had found his way back from the darkness, and now, with Kathleen by his side, he was ready to move forward. They built a life together, with Jake growing up in a home filled with love, laughter, and the unshakable bond they had formed. Despite the tragic past that brought them together, Raymond knew that the love he shared with Kathleen was one born out of strength, resilience, and a deep understanding of each other's wounds. It wasn't the love he had expected to find, but it was real, and it was everything he needed. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
We were having lunch when my friend and business partner, Victor Germain, casually asked, "What was Amelia doing at the Metro Hotel 2 Fridays ago?" I was leaving a seminar and saw her getting on the elevator. I hoped my surprise and hurt weren't obvious, so I quickly lied, saying, "I'm not sure, but with her job and having to meet clients at various locations, she might have been there for work." Excusing myself, I headed to the restroom to gather my thoughts. That particular day, Amelia, my wife, was supposed to be 1,700 miles away in Johnson City, Texas, visiting her mother. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near downtown Baytown. It took me several minutes to compose myself. When I returned to the table, My friends immediately noticed my distress. Luke Jenkins, another business partner and one of our group known as the Raunchy Rangers, asked if I was feeling okay. Max McKinney, the last of our quartet, added, "David, you look like someone just told you your dog died. Are you all right? Do you need someone to take you home?" I couldn't answer. Instead, I broke down. Grown men aren't supposed to cry, but I couldn't hold back. I lowered my head to the table and let the tears fall. My name is David Carter. At the time of this conversation, I was 33 years old and a partner in a computer communications and security firm alongside my three best friends. We'd been inseparable since 7th grade, eventually attending the same university. Max earned a degree in business management with a minor in accounting. Luke studied criminal justice and minored in electronic design, though poor eyesight ended his hopes of joining the police force. Victor and I both specialized in computer science. My focus was on network and cybersecurity, while Victor's was database management and programming. The Amelia that Victor mentioned was my wife of 5 years. She was 30 and worked as an administrative assistant at an investment firm. The week Victor referred to, Amelia was supposed to be assisting her sick mother in Texas. I wasn't invited on that trip. Her mother despised me for stealing her baby. She treated me as though I were some kind of criminal and even tried to force us to sleep in separate rooms when we visited after getting married. That put an end to my visits. Amelia and I first met when I was working as a computer technician for a small company. I was sent to her workplace to remove a virus from their network. At the time, she was the office manager there. I had just graduated and taken this job because it was the only opportunity available in the area I wanted to work in. When I arrived, I was introduced to Amelia Bennett, who told me to call her Amelia. She was assigned to assist me as I investigated the source of the virus and worked on eliminating it. After connecting my laptop in the network closet, I ran a deep virus scan and explained to Amelia that it would take between 2 and 4 hours to complete. I asked for permission to inspect each computer in the office individually, which she granted. The checks took about 10 minutes per machine. After reviewing all the devices in the staff areas without finding the source, I requested Amelia arrange a meeting with the executives. Once they were gathered, I asked for and was granted permission to inspect their computers as well. One of the vice presidents objected and said that he would not allow an outsider to view proprietary secrets that he had on his computer. I asked the CEO to talk to me outside for a minute. When we were in the hallway, I explained that I felt the man that was objecting was probably the source of the virus. I explained that I have not found any of the staff computers or their internet activities as the source of this virus. It, therefore, had to have come either from one of the executives or someone who used one of their machines inserting a CD, DVD, or USB drive, or surfing the web for unsafe sites, generally adult sites, and the resulting emails that some adult sites generate. I asked for and received permission to start with the complaining VP's office first. He was still complaining when I did the deep scan. He stayed in the room and watched as I ran the scan. When he saw that I did not access any of the files, and just had the virus-checking software scanning all of his computer files and his browser history, he calmed down. It turns out he was VP of Security and was anal retentive about protecting the company's assets. Surprise, it was not on his or any of the other executives' machine. I left the CEO's office for last. When I got there, like all of the other machines, there was no objectionable surfing of the web. However, this machine's history showed that someone had inserted a CD on the Friday of the week before. The CEO got a very embarrassed look on his face when he realized that his granddaughter had visited that day and he had let her play one of the few games that the company allowed on the system. Apparently, the granddaughter was bored with those games and inserted a CD she got from a friend. Bingo, virus source found. Embarrassment maximized. I cleaned it up and locked all of the CD drives and flash drives down to require administrative privileges. That way, the granddaughter could use the computer but could not insert any new programs into the system. The CEO was so upset that he paid the bill for my service call and also signed a contract for a year of monthly virus scans. Amelia had followed me all around, and we began talking. I found out she was 24 to my 26, and she had graduated from the local community college with an associate's degree in office management. She was not dating anyone and had not for several months. We seemed to get along, and I felt an attraction to her. I asked her if I could take her for a coffee or snack in order to get to know her better. I explained my feelings and that I hoped she had some of the same. She agreed to coffee. So after I clocked out, I picked her up at her work and we went to a restaurant on campus that had marvelous coffee. We talked for a long time, and I bought her a burger and fries and some ice cream. We talked until the place closed. We exchanged phone numbers, and because it was dark when we finished talking, I drove her to her car and followed her to her home. Once she was inside, I lightly tooted the horn and went home. I had told her about my goals and plans. The other Rangers and I had a plan that we started in college. We were going to get some real-world experience, save as much money as we could, and then we would start a business where we were all partners. We started dating, me exclusively from the start and Amelia from the third date. She told me of the 2 dates she went on and explained that they had been set up by her family. That was how I found out about the mother-in-law from hell. We went to her mother's house in Texas a couple of months after we started dating. Sophia met us at the airport and it did not go well. Mrs. Bennett, Sophia, was accompanied by a man our age that went up and hugged and tried to kiss Amelia. Amelia was having none of it and slapped the guy. He was stunned. He left. Then Amelia told her mother that she was very angry. She also said that there was no way she ever wanted to meet that cheating scumsucker again. Then she dropped a couple of big verbal and mental bombs on her mother. She informed her that she thought she would try something like that. So our plane tickets had an open date return. Sophia just stood there open-mouthed. Amelia walked over and then blew me away. She said as she kissed my cheek, "Mother, this is David Carter. David is going to be my husband. You will be invited to the wedding, but because of the mean stunt you just tried to pull, you will not have any say in the planning, choice of date, venue, or attendance. If you choose not to attend, you will never see or talk to me again. Now close your mouth and meet the best man I have ever met." To say I was stunned would be a huge understatement. We had never talked about marriage or even love. I had thought a lot about it, but I did not bring it up because I thought Amelia would think it was too soon. Wrong. As we were flying back home, Amelia told me she was sorry for saying that to her mother. She said that if I did not want, that was all she could say because I kissed her long and lovingly. No more talk of sorry. Amelia went on to explain to me that the jerk who had tried to kiss her was the first boy she had dated and had sex with. She said that Ethan Hayes seemed to be the man she would spend the rest of her life with. The end came when she found out he couldn't keep his pants zipped. He knocked up a classmate, and when confronted, skipped town and joined the Navy. That didn't work, as the girl sued and the Navy sent her part of his check every month for child support. Amelia added that the girl married, put the child in an orphanage, and the guy didn't know about the daughter, but Ethan wasn't on the hook anymore. Well, I got with the program. A ring was bought. A wedding was planned. Attendance chosen and accepted. The 3 remaining raunchy Rangers did rock, paper, scissors to see who was to be the best man. They all lost, because I was the best man. Luke came in second place, so he was the closest to me. Victor was next, then Harry hindmost, Max. We had a lot of joking and a lot of complaints about cheating and a whole lot of laughing. The girls were all beautiful. Sophia was quiet, and Amelia was the most beautiful bride ever. Sophia left before the reception, but I really think Amelia did not care. She told me later that night that her mother was a poor loser and had driven her father to take his own life. For that, Amelia had left as soon as she was accepted at the community college and had never, other than the weekend of me meeting Sophia, set foot in the house she grew up in. Wham bam. In less than a year after meeting her, we were married. Life went on, and the guys and I formed our partnership. We were lucky, as a virus attack occurred at one of our first customers' computer network farm. Word got around that we provided secure backup and quick recovery from virus and ransomware attacks. We turned a nice profit a full 8 months before we had planned. Amelia told me that she wanted to wait a couple of years to start a family. I was okay with that, but she never seemed to not want to make love. There was only one period when she was sick that we went for a week without some sexual activity. Nothing was off limits. Amelia and I tried everything and as many positions as we could without hurting one of us or adding someone else. About 3 years into the marriage, we discovered that I am sterile. The doctors thought that I may have injured myself when I crashed my homemade pushcart when the Rangers thought it would be fun and scary to take rides down the steepest hill in the area. The other guys went first, and by the time I was to go, we thought all was well. Not. I broke an arm and ruptured a couple of blood vessels in my groin. Apparently that was not all that was ruptured. Basically, I did a snip job at 13. Amelia almost looked relieved. We talked some, and she admitted she was afraid that she was going to turn out to be a mother like her mother. I held her and tried to reassure her that she was too much of a caring person. Then disaster struck. Sophia had a small stroke. Amelia went down to stay with her for about 2 weeks. She then hired a caregiver that we paid for. She even talked me into going down and visiting. Sophia, other than a slight face drop and left side weakness, was her obnoxious self. Amelia again stuck up for me, and we left after one night. After 2 more tries at visiting and no change, I never went back. Amelia went to check on her mother about 4 times a year. This went on for almost 2 years until I heard the question. Because we are a computer security company, the first thing I did on my next workday was hacking into the system of the Metro Hotel for the week she was gone, the week before, and the week after. Sure enough, Amelia had rented a room under her maiden name each Friday for those 3 weeks. She would check in at 11 o'clock, which was the earliest she could, take a king-size bed single room, and check out the next morning. That was strange because she was home every Friday night for each of those 3 weeks. The week she was in Texas, I even picked her up at the airport. Smelling an odor, not unlike a rat. I hacked their video surveillance system and downloaded each Friday and Saturday video for those 3 weeks. It seems Amelia would rent the room, always room 321. The room was near the back stairwell. She would go up to check it out, then go out the back way and let a man in and spend a few hours in the room. Then they would both leave out the back way and Amelia would check out by driving back while on her weekly Saturday morning food shopping trip. The week she was supposed to be with her mother, she came back Friday morning, and when the lovers were finished, he drove her out of the parking lot to go, I assume, to the airport. They left at about the time that was needed to get to the airport and have Amelia standing at the exit when I drove up. Among her other crimes against our love, that night she just about killed me with sex before taking a shower, so she was giving me sloppy seconds. I thought it was a pretty slick plan except for the fact that Victor spotted her. Now that I knew what was going on, I called the Rangers in and showed them the evidence. They were all appalled and angry. I asked the guys for help. We decided to frustrate the lovers for the next week by showing up at her normal check-in time and having one or more of us in the third-floor hallway when she would finally get to the room. We also decided to hack her phone to keep track of who she was with and pay him a visit. The next part of the plan was to gather video and stills of the 2 people in the room. I rented the same room at the Metro for the following Thursday, and when I asked specifically for room 321, the booking clerk asked why that room. I told the lady that my wife had fond memories of that room. I got it. I installed all of the surveillance equipment I thought the room would need. I had audio, video, and a stop-action video of every part of the room except the bathroom. I really did not want pictures of one of them taking a dump. It took about 90 minutes to set up the equipment and set it all up to come on at 12:30. I figured we could probably get away with frustrating them for an hour. I put the remote recorders in the ceiling in the hallway. The next day, Luke and I were in the lobby talking when Amelia came in and the desk clerk said, "Welcome again, Miss Bennett. Do you want the same room?" "Of course, Jane. Only that room. It has so many special memories for me." She took the offered key and turned to see both of us standing there right behind her. The look was one of fear, confusion, and surprisingly, of anger. She swallowed, and all of the emotions I saw smoothed out and a fake smile appeared. I said, "Hi, darling. Luke and I were in the area and thought we would get an early lunch. I'm really surprised to see you here." I continued, "Come on, join us. We haven't had a workday lunch in more than a year." She really could not refuse, so she said, "Let me go to the ladies' room and I'll be right there." When she rushed to the ladies, I activated my clone of her phone and started its record function. She called the same number that we had seen on her phone several times that week. She was whispering, please pick up," as the phone rang for 4 or 5 times. When the a-hole answered, he said, "Sweetheart, you never call before our afternoon delight. Is something wrong?" She said, "Yes, I just ran into my husband. He insists that I have lunch with him. We can't meet until about 12:30. I'm sorry, but if I don't do this, he will be suspicious and ruin all of our plans. 12:30, please?" She was almost begging. Of course, just a couple more weeks and I will be able to destroy his company, and we can go to Texas with his money and help your mother. That really put a different spin on the whole affair. Apparently, from what they were inferring, they were planning on ruining our business and skipping town. Now I was pissed and ready to rumble. Luke saw the fire in my eyes and grabbed my arm gently and said, "Just be calm. If we get what we want today, we will destroy them next week. Be calm." I nodded and took a couple of very deep breaths. Then I took a couple more. Amelia returned all smiles and said, "Lunch would be great. The client I was supposed to meet here is running late, so if I can get to him by 12:15, I will be great." Lunch was pretty quiet for us guys, but Amelia had diarrhea of the mouth. I don't remember a single thing she said or what she rambled on about, but she talked so much, she didn't finish her lunch by noon. She excused herself and said she really had to check out the conference room before the client arrived. Luke and I went up the stairs after waiting for about 5 minutes. Victor called and said a car with Texas vanity plates that said Ethan just pulled into the lot. Now I knew who she was screwing. I made it a point to be walking with Luke down the hall talking loudly about how we could upgrade the surveillance systems in the hallway when we completed the contract we had won. As we stopped outside the door of 321, Luke responded loudly, "Yeah, just think. A lot of illicit nooners will stop using this hotel when we post all of the required signage. Too bad. Love, or at least lust, will be thwarted. But so will all of the rest of the sexual assaults that guy would have committed. Imagine having to drug a girl to get sex from them. All the victims could remember was a Texas vanity plate with JR as the first 3 letters. Then we walked away. We knew that there had been one sexual assault in the hotel, but that one was a few months ago, and the victim positively identified the perp. We went to the stairway door and walked up part of the steps to the next floor and sat on the steps to watch as the door slowly opened and Amelia's hair showed in the doorway. I then said loud enough to echo through the stairwell, "You know, the attacker always used the last room on the 3rd floor for the reported incidents. Room 321, wasn't it? We should be able to help the police get a good look at him once the hall cameras are activated. Let's head down to the new security room and test the 3rd floor cameras first." Luke tried to keep the laughter out of his voice. "No. You know we only have the contract to install and activate the system. We won't have any access to it afterward. Plus, they don't want the system activated until Sunday at midnight. Besides, the attacker never seems to strike on Fridays, and the room is booked by a lady today." We watched as the door slowly closed and Amelia disappeared back into the hall. We left, went downstairs, and collected a laughing Victor. When we asked what was so funny, he said that he and Ethan were at the foot of the stairs while you two were talking. As soon as you stopped, I told Ethan I had to leave, ran to the men's room, and just about pissed my pants laughing. The look of fright and guilt on Tex's face was priceless. The remote cameras turned on in 321 on, and the 2 lovers were in no mood for sex for quite a while. It was after 2 o'clock before Ethan Hayes got Amelia naked and proceeded to pound her. When he was done the first time, we heard them start to plot how they were going to wreck our company and loot all of the company and all 4 personal accounts. Then as Ethan was leaving, I heard the words from Amelia that destroyed any love I was still feeling for her. "When we get the stupid geek skinned, let's go get our daughter, and she can finally be with mommy and daddy. I'm sorry about the slap and the 6-year wait, but I really did think I was in love with him. But other than sex, he has no imagination and is a stick in the mud. He really thought that mama hated him. She needs to get her cut of the money before we leave for Paraguay." Luke and I both looked at Victor, and he just nodded. We took all of the tapes and retrieved all of the equipment and went back to the office. I called Amelia and told her we had a small problem at work, and I would not be home until after 10. The raunchy Rangers went into attack mode that night. We hacked the office network where Amelia worked and made it look like she was stealing money from them and transferring the money to an account in Johnson City, Texas. The account was jointly owned by Sophia Bennett and Ethan Hayes. Then we hacked that bank's records and made it look like the account was opened the same day the money was first stolen. We made it look to Amelia's office like she tried to cover her tracks. Then we broke into the records of the Johnson City clerk's office and found a birth certificate for Amelia Bennett, showing her to be 26, not 30. We also found a birth certificate for one Chloe Bennett born more than a year before I married Amelia. Amelia was the mother, and the father was listed as Ethan Hayes. The marriage license for them was applied for and granted, but never registered as completed. As we found all of that, we tried to crack the records of the college Amelia claimed to have graduated from. The college did not exist. The next step in the plan was to move all of our company money and as much of our personal money out of the current accounts. We then made up a phony sales contract that showed that we sold the company to a big nationwide firm for just paying off all of our outstanding debts. The contract showed that we were being kept on staff for a period of not more than 6 months to show the new people to our current customers. It also showed that we were taking a 60% pay cut because of the poor management we had shown. Attached to the contract were a bunch of bogus overdue bill notices. The final touch was a couple of bogus bank statements that showed overdrafts in all of the company accounts. The next step was that I was to leave the contract on the kitchen table next to Amelia's purse. We wanted her to grab it and look at it while she was shopping the next morning. We also sent an anonymous email with a copy of the audio recording to the local police. The email stated that the voices were recorded in room 321 of the Metro Hotel on the preceding Friday. We made it suspend in cyberspace and arrive in their inbox at 9:30 Monday. We figured that they would at least talk to Amelia and try to get Ethan's identification from her. We really wanted the apparent embezzlement to be found when they investigated. The contract was back on the table, but Amelia had seen it and picked it up. Whether she had read all of it or not, the order of the attachments was rearranged. She also left all of the food still in bags on the kitchen table. Her car was gone, and so was all of the house cash, about $1,500 that we kept in the house to have mad money. She took all of her jewelry and all of the ATM and credit cards. We had canceled the ATM card, and I called the credit card companies and told them that any use beyond 8 a.m. this morning was unauthorized. The cards were all in my name, and Amelia was only an authorized user because she was a shopaholic. Her personal credit score was in the high 500s, mine the 800s. I also sent by courier copies of all of the video and audio to Amelia's mother. When Amelia got there, she would know I was onto her. Apparently, Ethan was not ready to leave before Monday, because the police showed up at Amelia's work and took her down to the police station for questioning. Her office got an anonymous call about overhearing a woman named Amelia talking to a guy named Ethan in a cafe Sunday at lunch. The caller said that they talked about how when they got the husband's money and his company's money, they would finish emptying out her company's accounts. The company immediately called in their auditors and had them check all of their accounts. They found the account that was missing the money and the money trail to Sophia and Ethan. The auditors notified the police, and Amelia was arrested. Ethan tried to get out of town, but the same caller who tipped the police off gave them his license plate info. Sophia was arrested and had a massive stroke from the shock and died before they could get her to a hospital. During the search of the house, the stuff I sent to her was found. Amelia saw that she was totally screwed and pled guilty to all charges in return for a reduced sentence. Ethan decided to plead to the conspiracy if he could have the embezzlement charges dropped. Amelia was sentenced to 6 years in prison and ordered to make restitution. Ethan got 12 years. Who said there is no sex discrimination in sentencing? The raunchy Rangers did have a buyout offer, but the real offer was for a lot of money and continued employment at salaries that were greater than we gave ourselves. All of the moved money suddenly reappeared where it belonged. Amelia was credited with making her restitution and also had her sentence reduced. I got a divorce and had to give Amelia half of 1 year's salary at the old rate. I did. Then I hired a good money manager for her, so she would have a little more when she got out after a now 4-year sentence. We all stayed with the new people long enough to get everyone settled in. Then I talked all of the other Rangers into joining me and opening a computer security consulting firm. The firm was to be called Ranger Consulting, as we were not selling any actual products or services, but only consulting on a company's computer security. We got out of our non-compete clauses. The company we sold even became our first customer. Even though Amelia made me look like a dumb schmuck, I did not give up on women or love. I found a great lady. She was Max's sister, Lila. We dated for a couple of years and got married. When I told Lila of my past problems and of Amelia's daughter, she said to see if we could go get Chloe. We went down to Texas for 6 months and went to the orphanage where Chloe Bennett was being housed and filed to adopt her. I never told my daughter of her mother, and she became the light of my life. I have always been third in my house, but the bronze medal was on the wall next to Chloe's gold and Lila's silver. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Welcome back to Cheating Tales Lab. Thanks for being here. We've got another juicy story for you. So let's get started. Leroy Morrow's feet pounded the pavement, matching the rhythm of his racing heart. The cool night air stung his lungs as he ran, eyes locked on the taillights of the unfamiliar car that had swallowed his wife moments ago. 18 years of marriage, and this was how it unraveled, with a clandestine rendezvous on a Saturday night. He'd left Max, his loyal German shepherd, with old Mrs. Hanson next door. The woman had peered at him quizzically through her thick glasses when he knocked on her door. "Leroy, is everything all right?" she asked, tightening her robe. "Fine, Mrs. Hanson. Just need to run an errand. Would you mind watching Max for an hour or two?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, dear. You know I adore that big lug." As Max trotted into Mrs. Hanson's house, Leroy was already jogging down the street, his eyes never leaving the car that was now turning onto the main road. Now, as Leroy rounded another corner, he was grateful for the years of marathon training that allowed him to keep pace with the vehicle ahead. His mind raced faster than his feet. Where was Gabriella going? Who was she with? The questions burned in his throat, bitter as bile. The car finally came to a stop outside the Rusty Nail, a dive bar on the outskirts of town that Leroy had driven past countless times but never entered. He slowed to a walk, chest heaving, and ducked behind a rusted-out pickup truck in the gravel lot. From his vantage point, he watched as Gabriella emerged from the passenger side, her familiar silhouette illuminated by the harsh neon of the bar's sign. A man climbed out of the driver's seat, and Leroy felt his stomach lurch. Even in the dim light, there was no mistaking the cocky swagger of Mickey Shepard, the new football coach at Leroy's high school. Leroy's hands clenched into fists as he watched Mickey pull Gabriella close, their lips meeting in a passionate embrace that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. "You're insatiable," Mickey growled, loud enough for Leroy to hear. "Can't keep your hands off me, can you?" Gabriella giggled, a sound that cut through Leroy like a knife. Less talking, more action. Coach, she purred. Rage boiled in Leroy's veins, but he forced himself to remain still, to keep watching. He needed more than just suspicion. He needed proof. The couple stumbled towards the seedy motel adjacent to the bar, pawing at each other like hormone-crazed teenagers. Leroy waited until they disappeared into one of the rooms before approaching the motel office. Inside, he found a familiar face behind the counter, Vincent Maynard, a former student who had graduated a few years back. Vincent's eyes widened in recognition. "Mr. Morrow? What are you doing here?" Leroy leaned in close, his voice low and urgent. "Vincent, I need your help. It's important." The young man shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, Mr. Morrow. I could lose my job." "Vincent," Leroy cut him off, his tone brooking no argument. "You remember how I stayed after school for weeks helping you pass physics? How I wrote that college recommendation that got you into state? I'm calling in that favor. Now." Vincent swallowed hard, then nodded. "What do you need?" "The room number for Mickey Shepard and the woman he's with. And access to your security cameras." Vincent's eyes darted nervously to the door. "Mr. Morrow, that's not exactly legal." Leroy's gaze hardened. "Neither is what they're doing to me." "Please, Vincent. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial." After a moment's hesitation, Vincent nodded. He tapped a few keys on his computer, then scribbled something on a piece of paper. "Room 17. And here's the master key. Just be careful, okay?" Leroy nodded gratefully. "I will." And Vincent? This conversation never happened. A few minutes later, Leroy stood outside room 17, his heart pounding in his ears. He could hear muffled laughter and the creak of bed springs from within. Pushing down the bile rising in his throat, he used the master key Vincent had provided to silently open the door. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of a cheap lamp on the nightstand. Clothes were strewn haphazardly across the floor. Leroy moved quickly, snapping photos with his phone. Gabriella's purse, Mickey's wallet, their entangled clothes forming a damning trail to the bed. He was about to leave when Mickey's voice, thick with alcohol and arrogance, drifted from the bathroom. "Can't believe we've been pulling this off for months. That clueless bastard has no idea." Gabriella's giggle followed. "Leroy's always been too trusting for his own good. It's almost too easy." "Yeah, well, not all of us can be brilliant physicists," Mickey sneered. "Some of us have to make do with being irresistible to his wife." Leroy's vision blurred red for a moment, but he forced himself to breathe deeply. Now wasn't the time for confrontation. He needed to be smart about this. As he slipped out of the room, Leroy heard Gabriella's voice once more. "God, I love how you make me feel." Leroy never. He shut the door, cutting off her words. His hands were shaking as he made his way back to the motel office. Vincent was waiting, a USB drive in his hand. "Security footage," he explained quietly. "Mr. Morrow, I'm really sorry about whatever's going on. You were always one of the good ones." Leroy nodded curtly and left, the weight of betrayal settling heavily on his shoulders. The drive home was a blur, his mind replaying the night's events on a sickening loop. The house was quiet when he returned, Max's absence a stark reminder of how quickly everything had changed. Leroy headed straight for his home office, firing up his computer and beginning the task of compiling evidence. Hours passed as he sifted through their financial records. Bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals. Credit card bills with charges for hotels and restaurants he'd never visited. And now, the damning photos and security footage that confirmed his worst fears. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the windows, Leroy heard the front door open. He tensed, listening to the familiar sound of Gabriella's footsteps as she tried to sneak up the stairs. "Mom?" Jason's voice, thick with sleep and confusion, stopped Gabriella in her tracks. Leroy moved to the doorway of his office, watching the scene unfold. His 17-year-old son stood at the top of the stairs, Leroy's tablet clutched in his hands. The boy's face was a mask of hurt and anger as he turned the screen towards his mother, displaying the evidence of her infidelity. "We don't want you here," Jason's voice trembled, but his words were clear and cutting. "Never come back home." Dad will divorce you soon. Get out. Gabriella's face drained of color. Jason, sweetie, I can explain. Explain what? Jason's voice cracked with emotion. How you've been cheating on Dad. How you've been lying to us. It's not that simple, Gabriella pleaded. Your father and I, we've been having problem. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. Leroy's voice cut through the air as he stepped out of the shadows. His tone was eerily calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil in his eyes. Gabriella whirled to face him, her expression shifting from shock to defiance. Leroy, you don't understand. Mickey and Save it. Leroy cut her off. Your things are packed. They're on the porch. I suggest you leave now, before I decide to share these lovely photos with the entire PDA. You wouldn't dare, Gabriella hissed, her eyes narrowing. I'll ruin you. I'll tell everyone what a controlling, emotionally abusive. Go ahead. Leroy's smile was cold. See how well your lies hold up against hard evidence. And if you try to retaliate in any way, I promise you, every sordid detail of your affair will become public knowledge. You can't do this. Gabriella's voice took on a pleading tone. What about Jason? What about our family? You should have thought about that before you started screwing the football coach, Jason spat. His young face twisted with disgust. For a moment, Gabriella looked like she might argue further. Then, without another word, she turned and fled down the stairs. The front door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the suddenly empty house. Jason sagged against the wall, the tablet slipping from his grasp. Leroy moved quickly, wrapping his arms around his son. I'm sorry, Jace. I'm so sorry you had to see that. The boy clung to him, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. How could she do this to us, Dad? Leroy held him tightly, his mind already racing ahead to the battles that were sure to come. I don't know, son, but we'll get through this. Together. As they stood there, father and son united in their pain, Leroy's phone buzzed. A text from Gabriella. This isn't over. You'll regret this. Leroy deleted the message without replying. He guided Jason to the kitchen, his movements automatic as he started brewing a pot of coffee. They had a long day ahead of them. What happens now? Jason asked, his voice small and uncertain. Leroy took a deep breath, considering his words carefully. Now, we protect ourselves. I'll be contacting a lawyer first thing Monday morning. We'll need to secure our finances, change the locks. There's a lot to do. Jason nodded, his young face set with determination. I want to help. Whatever you need, Dad. Pride swelled in Leroy's chest, momentarily displacing the pain. Thank you, son. We're going to need to be strong for each other. As the coffee maker gurgled, Leroy's mind raced through the steps ahead. He'd need to inform the school administration, get ahead of any rumors Gabriella or Mickey might try to spread. There would be legal battles, custody arrangements to sort out, but as he looked at Jason, saw the trust and love in his son's eyes, Leroy felt a surge of resolve. They would weather this storm. And when the dust settled, Gabriella and Mickey would learn the hard way that they had grossly underestimated Leroy Morrow. The game had changed, and Leroy was ready to play for keeps. As the sun rose fully, casting its light on a world forever changed, Leroy Morrow made a silent vow. He would not let this betrayal break him. He would not let Gabriella and Mickey's actions destroy the life he had built. And he would sure as hell make them regret ever crossing him. Dad. Jason's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Are you okay? Leroy managed a small smile. I will be, Jace. We both will be. It's going to be tough for a while, but we've got each other. That's what matters. Jason nodded, then his face hardened. I hate her for what she's done to you. To us. I know, son, but don't let that hate consume you. We're better than that. We'll handle this the right way, and we'll come out stronger on the other side. As they sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and planning their next moves, Leroy felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. The initial shock and pain were still there, but they were overshadowed by a steely determination. Gabriella had made her choice. Now it was time for Leroy to make his. And he chose to fight. For his dignity, for his son, and for the future they deserved. The betrayal had blindsided him, but Leroy Morrow was far from defeated. In fact, He was just getting started. Monday morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. Leroy Morrow stood in front of his bedroom mirror, adjusting his tie with steady hands that belied the turmoil within. The events of the weekend felt like a distant nightmare, but the empty bed behind him was a stark reminder of his new reality. As he drove to Oak Ridge High, Leroy's mind raced through potential scenarios. He knew confronting Mickey Shepard was inevitable, but he was determined to maintain control. The last thing he needed was to give that smug bastard any ammunition. The teacher's lounge was abuzz with the usual Monday morning chatter when Leroy entered. A few colleagues shot him curious glances, no doubt sensing the tension radiating off him. He poured himself a cup of coffee, pointedly ignoring the corner where Mickey usually held court with his sycophantic admirers. Well, if it isn't the brilliant Mr. Morrow. Leroy turned slowly, coming face to face with Mickey Shepard's cocky grin. The football coach leaned against the counter, his muscled arms folded across his chest. "Heard you've been having some trouble at home," Mickey continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "Real shame. Hope everything works out for you." Leroy took a sip of his coffee, his expression neutral. "I appreciate your concern, Mickey, but I think you should be more worried about your own future." Mickey's grin faltered for a moment before returning full force. "Is that a threat, Morrow? Because I gotta say, coming from a scrawny little physics nerd, it's not very intimidating." In one fluid motion, Mickey closed the distance between them, using his larger frame to loom over Leroy. "Maybe you should stick to your equations and leave the real men's business to guys like me." The lounge had gone silent, all eyes on the confrontation. Leroy set his coffee cup down with deliberate calm. "You know, Mickey, there's an interesting principle in physics called leverage. It states that even a small force, applied correctly, can overcome a much larger one." Mickey's brow furrowed in confusion. "What the hell are you?" His words were cut off as Leroy moved with lightning speed. In a series of precise movements, he grabbed Mickey's wrist, twisted, and used the larger man's momentum against him. Before anyone could blink, Mickey was face down on the floor, his arm painfully wrenched behind his back. "You see," Leroy continued conversationally, "it's all about applying pressure to the right points. A concept you might want to familiarize yourself with, both on and off the field." The lounge erupted in shocked murmurs. Mickey struggled, his face red with exertion and humiliation. "Get off me, you psycho. I'll have your job for this." "Mr. Morrow. Mr. Shepard. My office now." Principal Chris Sullivan's voice cut through the chaos. Leroy released Mickey, stepping back as the coach scrambled to his feet. "This isn't over," Mickey hissed, rubbing his sore arm. Leroy met his glare evenly. "Oh, I think it is." In Sullivan's office, Mickey launched into a tirade before the door had fully closed. "Did you see what that maniac did to me? I want him fired, suspended, arrested." Sullivan held up a hand, silencing him. "Enough, Mickey." "Leroy, care to explain what happened?" Leroy nodded, his demeanor calm and professional. "Certainly, Chris. But before I do, there's something you need to see." He pulled out a USB drive and handed it to the principal. "This contains security footage from the Rusty Nail Motel, taken this past Saturday night. It shows Coach Shepard engaging in inappropriate behavior with my wife." Mickey's face drained of color. "You're bluffing. There's no way." "I assure you, it's quite real." Leroy cut him off. "Along with credit card receipts, text messages, and eyewitness accounts from several of our students who've seen you two together." Sullivan's expression hardened as he plugged in the drive and watched the footage. After a few moments, he turned to Mickey, disgust evident in his eyes. "Is this true, Shepard?" Mickey's bravado crumbled. "Look, it's not what it seems. We're both consenting adults and—" "Save it," Sullivan snapped. "You're suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. I suggest you leave the premises now before I have security escort you out." As Mickey stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Sullivan turned to Leroy. "I'm sorry you had to go through this, Leroy. We'll handle the situation discreetly." Leroy nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Chris. I appreciate your understanding." As he left the office, Leroy couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. Round one had gone to him, but he knew the battle was far from over. News of the affair spread through Oak Ridge like wildfire. By lunchtime, whispers and sidelong glances followed Leroy through the hallways. But to his surprise, the looks weren't of judgment or pity. Instead, he saw respect and even admiration in the eyes of his colleagues and students. Meanwhile, across town, Gabriela Morrow was having a very different experience. She sat in her real estate office, staring at her silent phone. The calls that usually flooded in on a Monday morning were conspicuously absent. Her assistant, Jenny, knocked timidly on the door. "Ms. Morrow?" The Petersons called. They want to cancel their listing appointment this afternoon." Gabriela's grip tightened on her desk. "Did they say why?" Jenny shifted uncomfortably. "They said they didn't feel comfortable working with someone of your character." "My character?" Gabriela's voice rose sharply. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "I'm sorry, Ms. Morrow. It's just, people are talking about you and Coach Shepard." Gabriela's blood ran cold. How had it spread so quickly? She dismissed Jenny with a wave, then frantically began scrolling through her social media. Her inbox was flooded with messages, ranging from disappointed to outright hostile. "This can't be happening," she muttered, her perfectly manicured nails clacking against her phone screen as she typed out a hasty post. "Friends and clients, I'm deeply hurt by the vicious rumors circulating about my personal life. My husband and I have been experiencing difficulties, and Coach Shepard has been a supportive friend during this trying time. Any insinuations of impropriety are baseless and cruel. I ask for privacy and understanding as we navigate this difficult period." She hit post, then sat back, taking a deep breath. She could salvage this. She just needed to control the narrative. Across town, Mickey Shepard paced his small apartment, phone pressed to his ear. "Pick up, damn it," he growled as Gabriela's voicemail kicked in for the third time. A text from his assistant coach pinged. "Dude, what the hell? The whole team's talking about you banging Morrow's wife. Tell me it's not true." Mickey hurled the phone across the room with a roar of frustration. This couldn't be happening. He'd worked too hard, climbed too far, to let it all slip away now. His phone buzzed again from its new resting place under the couch. He retrieved it, seeing Gabriela's name on the screen. "About time," he snapped. "Have you seen what's happening? We need to get our stories straight." Gabriela's voice was tense. "I've already made a statement on social media. We're just friends. You've been supporting me through marital difficulties." "Got it." Mickey scoffed. "You think that weak-ass story is gonna cut it? We need something bigger. Something to take the heat off us and put it on that sanctimonious prick Leroy." "Like what?" "I don't know. Say he was abusive, controlling. That's why you turned to me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mickey, that's a serious accusation. I can't just—" "You can and you will," Mickey snarled. "Unless you want your precious reputation completely destroyed. We're in this together, sweetheart. Time to pick a side." As he hung up, Mickey didn't notice the small device blinking steadily from the potted plant on his windowsill. In an unmarked van across the street, Marco Dudley, private investigator, smiled as he adjusted his headphones. "Got you, you son of a bitch," he muttered, hitting the stop button on his recorder. Back at Oak Ridge High, Leroy was surprised to find a small crowd gathered outside his classroom after the final bell. Former students, fellow teachers, even a few parents stood waiting, concern etched on their faces. Mr. Morrow, one of his former students, now a college freshman, stepped forward. "We heard what happened. We just wanted you to know. We're here for you. Whatever you need." Leroy felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you," he managed, genuinely touched by the show of support. As the crowd dispersed, Leroy's phone buzzed with a text from Marco. "Got something big. Meet me at your place ASAP." Leroy hurried home, his mind racing. As he pulled into his driveway, he saw Marco's nondescript van already parked on the street. Inside, Marco was waiting with Jason, a smile on his face. "You're gonna want to hear this," he said, hitting play on his recorder. As Mickey and Gabriela's conversation filled the room, Leroy felt a mix of anger and vindication wash over him. Jason's face darkened with each word. "They're trying to paint you as the bad guy," the teenager spat. "After everything they've done." Leroy placed a hand on his son's shoulder. Let them try. We've got the truth on our side. Marco nodded. And now we've got proof of their conspiracy. This'll be gold in court, Leroy. As Marco left, promising to get the recording properly processed and authenticated, Leroy turned to Jason. You okay, kiddo? Jason nodded, his jaw set in determination. Yeah, I can't believe Mom would stoop so low. Leroy sighed. People do desperate things when they're backed into a corner. But we're not going to let them win. We're going to take the high road. How? Jason asked skeptically. Leroy smiled. By focusing on what matters. Speaking of which, don't you have a science fair project to work on? Jason's eyes lit up. Yeah, we're building a scale model of a sustainable city. It's gonna be awesome. As they headed to the garage to work on the project, Leroy felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wouldn't let Gabriella and Mickey's schemes distract him from what truly mattered, his son, his students, and the life they were rebuilding together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Leroy threw himself into preparing his students for the upcoming state science fair, determined not to let his personal turmoil affect their chances. The kids responded with enthusiasm, staying late after school and even coming in on weekends to perfect their projects. It was during one of these late-night sessions, just days before the fair, that disaster struck. Leroy had stayed behind to lock up after the last student left. As he did a final sweep of the science lab, he noticed something off about one of the main projects, a complex model demonstrating clean energy distribution in urban environments. Upon closer inspection, his heart sank. Crucial components had been damaged, wires cut, and the central computer system wiped clean. This wasn't an accident. Someone had deliberately sabotaged their work. Leroy's first instinct was to call the police, but he hesitated. A formal investigation would take time they didn't have, and it would crush his students' spirits. No, he needed to handle this himself. He pulled out his phone and dialed Marco. I need your help, and bring your best surveillance equipment. The next morning, Leroy gathered his dejected students in the lab. I know this looks bad, he said, looking at their crestfallen faces. But we're not giving up. We're going to rebuild, better than before. And we're going to catch whoever did this. As the kids set to work, fueled by a mix of determination and righteous anger, Leroy pulled aside his most trusted student, Sarah. I need your help with something, he said quietly, outlining his plan. That night, the lab was dark and silent. Hidden cameras, courtesy of Marco, covered every angle. Leroy and Sarah crouched in a supply closet, watching the feeds on a tablet. Hours passed. Leroy was beginning to think he'd miscalculated when a shadow passed across one of the screens. The door to the lab creaked open, and a familiar figure slipped inside. I knew it, Sarah whispered as Mickey Shepard's face came into view. They watched as Mickey approached the partially rebuilt project, a pair of wire cutters in his hand. Just as he was about to strike, Leroy burst from the closet. Freeze! Mickey whirled, his face a mask of shock and rage. You! How did you? Did you really think I'd leave the lab unguarded after what you did? Leroy's voice was cold. It's over, Mickey. We've got you on camera. Breaking and entering, destruction of property, attempted sabotage. Your coaching career is done. Mickey lunged, swinging wildly. But Leroy was prepared. He sidestepped the attack, using Mickey's momentum to send him crashing into a lab table. By the time Mickey regained his feet, Marco and 2 police officers had entered the room. As Mickey was led away in handcuffs, spitting threats and obscenities, Leroy turned to his wide-eyed student. You okay, Sarah? She nodded, a grin spreading across her face. That was awesome, Mr. Morrow. Wait till the others hear about this. Leroy chuckled. Let's focus on finishing our project first. We've got a science fair to win. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. News of Mickey's arrest spread quickly, cementing Leroy's status as a local hero. But he paid little attention to the gossip, pouring all his energy into helping his students rebuild their project. The night before the fair, Leroy surveyed the finished model with pride. It wasn't just as good as the original, it was better. His students had taken the setback as a challenge, innovating and improving at every step. We did it, Mr. Morrow, Jason said, clapping his father on the back. We actually did it. Leroy smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the late hour or the coffee they'd been mainlining. No, son. You did it. All of you. I just provided the coffee and moral support. The state science fair was a blur of nervous energy and last-minute adjustments. Leroy watched from the sidelines as his students presented their project to the judges, fielding questions with confidence and enthusiasm. When the winners were announced, Leroy wasn't surprised to hear Oak Ridge High called for not one, but 3 top awards. The students erupted in cheers, mobbing him in a group hug that nearly knocked him off his feet. As they posed for photos with their trophies, Leroy caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. Gabriella stood at the back of the auditorium, her expression unreadable. Their eyes met for a moment before she turned and walked away. Leroy felt a twinge of something. Not regret, exactly, but a sense of finality. The last thread connecting him to his old life had been severed. He turned back to his celebrating students, pushing the thought from his mind. This was his life now, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Gabriella Morrow stared at her reflection in the mirror of the cheap motel room she now called home. Her once flawless makeup was smudged, dark circles prominent under her eyes. How had it come to this? Next to her, Mickey Shepard sprawled on the unmade bed, flipping through channels on the ancient TV. Would you stop primping already? We've got work to do. Gabriella's lip curled in disgust. The initial thrill of their affair had long since faded, leaving behind only bitterness and desperation. And what brilliant plan have you cooked up this time, Mickey? Your last one worked out so well. Mickey sat up, his eyes narrowing. Watch your tone, sweetheart. Remember, we're in this together. Unless you want to crawl back to your ex and beg for scraps. The thought of facing Leroy again made Gabriella's stomach churn. She'd underestimated him, badly. The meek, predictable husband she'd taken for granted had transformed into a formidable opponent, systematically dismantling the life she'd built. Fine, she snapped. What's the plan? Mickey's grin was all predator. We're going to hit him where it hurts. His precious reputation. As Mickey outlined his scheme, Gabriella felt a flicker of doubt. Fabricating evidence of abuse seemed like a dangerous gamble. But what choice did she have? Her real estate business was in shambles, her social circle had abandoned her, and the divorce proceedings were not going in her favor. It'll work, Mickey assured her, mistaking her silence for hesitation. Trust me. Once we're done, Leroy Morrow won't know what hit him. Across town, in a sleek office overlooking Main Street, Leroy sat across from his lawyer, Melody Hancock. The petite, silver-haired woman exuded an aura of calm competence that had immediately put Leroy at ease when they first met. So, Melody said, shuffling through a stack of papers, our sources indicate that Gabriella and her companion are planning something big for the upcoming hearing. Are you prepared for whatever they might throw at us? Leroy nodded, his expression grim. As ready as I can be. But I have to admit, I'm worried about Jason. This whole ordeal has been hard on him. Melody's eyes softened. That's understandable. But from what you've told me, he's a strong kid. And he has you in his corner. Thanks, Melody. So, what's our strategy? The lawyer's smile turned predatory. We go on the offensive. I've compiled a comprehensive record of Gabriella's infidelity, financial misconduct, and recent attempts at sabotage. By the time I'm done, the judge will see exactly who the real victim is in this situation. As Leroy left the office, he felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. The final showdown was approaching, and he was determined to emerge victorious, not just for himself, but for Jason. The day of the hearing arrived, the courthouse steps crowded with reporters and curious onlookers. Leroy strode up confidently, Jason at his side. They ignored the shouted questions and camera flashes, focusing on the battle ahead. Inside, Gabriella and Mickey were already seated, their heads bent close in whispered conversation. Gabriella's eyes widened slightly when she saw Leroy, quickly averting her gaze. Mickey, however, met Leroy's stare with a smug grin. As the proceedings began, Gabriella's lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, launched into an impassioned speech about his client's years of suffering under an emotionally abusive husband. He presented a series of emails and text messages, purportedly showing Leroy's controlling and manipulative behavior. Leroy's fists clenched under the table, fury rising in his chest. It was all lies, carefully crafted half-truths designed to paint him as a monster. He glanced at Jason, seeing the same anger reflected in his son's eyes. When it was Melody's turn to present their case, she rose slowly, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the theatrical performance of Gabriella's lawyer. "Your Honor," she began, her voice clear and steady, "the evidence presented by the opposing counsel is a fabrication, a desperate attempt by Mrs. Morrow and her paramour to manipulate this court. I have here a comprehensive record of the true facts in this case." Over the next hour, Melody systematically dismantled Gabriella's claims. She presented financial records showing Gabriella's misuse of joint accounts to fund her affair. Eyewitness testimonies from neighbors and colleagues painted a picture of Leroy as a devoted husband and father. And finally, she played the damning recording of Mickey and Gabriella plotting to discredit Leroy. As the evidence mounted, Gabriella seemed to shrink in her seat. Mickey's smug expression had long since vanished, replaced by barely contained panic. Leroy, for his part, remained stoic, his eyes fixed on the judge. When Melody finished her presentation, the courtroom was silent. The judge, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, surveyed the room with piercing eyes. "I've seen a lot in my years on the bench," she said finally, her voice heavy with disapproval, "but rarely have I encountered such a blatant attempt to pervert the course of justice. Mrs. Morrow, Mr. Shepard, your actions are reprehensible." Turning to Leroy, her expression softened slightly. "Mr. Morrow, in light of the evidence presented, I am granting your petition for divorce. You will receive full custody of your son, Jason, and retain ownership of the family home. Mrs. Morrow, you will be responsible for all legal fees incurred during these proceedings." As the judge's gavel fell, sealing the verdict, a wave of relief washed over Leroy. It was over. They had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around them, shouting questions. Leroy put a protective arm around Jason, guiding him through the crowd. From the corner of his eye, he saw Gabriella and Mickey being cornered by a particularly aggressive group of journalists. "Dad," Jason said quietly as they reached their car, "is it really over?" Leroy smiled, squeezing his son's shoulder. "The legal battle is, kiddo. But something tells me Gabriella and Mickey aren't done trying to cause trouble." He was right. A week after the court's decision, Gabriella and Mickey appeared on a local news station, painting themselves as victims of a vindictive husband and a biased legal system. "Leroy Morrow has everyone fooled," Gabriella said, her eyes brimming with carefully rehearsed tears. "He's manipulated the entire town, turned my own son against me. I just want the truth to come out." Mickey nodded solemnly beside her. "As an educator, I feel it's my duty to speak out against this injustice. Mr. Morrow's influence over the school board and local officials is deeply concerning." Leroy watched the interview with a mixture of disgust and determination. He'd anticipated this move, and he was ready to counter it. The next day, he called a town hall meeting. The community center was packed, curious faces turning to watch as Leroy took the stage. Jason sat in the front row, offering a supportive nod. "I know many of you saw last night's interview with my ex-wife and Mickey Shepard," Leroy began, his voice steady. "I'm not here to sling mud or make accusations. I'm here to present facts." Over the next hour, Leroy laid out the full story of Gabriella and Mickey's affair, their attempts to discredit him, and the evidence that had swayed the judge. He played recordings, showed financial documents, and presented testimonies from students and colleagues. "I don't ask for your sympathy," he concluded. "I only ask that you consider the facts and draw your own conclusions." "Thank you." The room erupted in applause as Leroy stepped down from the podium. People surged forward, offering handshakes and words of support. In the back of the room, a grim-faced man in a suit quietly took notes. The fallout was swift and merciless. The State Real Estate Board launched an ethics investigation into Gabriella's conduct, suspending her license pending the results. Mickey found himself facing potential criminal charges for his role in the science fair sabotage. Weeks turned into months. Leroy and Jason settled into a new routine, slowly rebuilding their lives. They remodeled the house, erasing painful memories and creating a fresh start. Leroy threw himself into his work, his dedication earning him a promotion to head of the science department. Before they knew it, Jason's graduation day had arrived. Leroy stood at the podium, looking out over a sea of caps and gowns, his chest swelling with pride. "Life will test you," he said, his voice carrying across the hushed auditorium. "It will throw challenges at you that seem insurmountable. But remember this: integrity and resilience are not just words. They are choices we make every day. Choose wisely, and there is no obstacle you cannot overcome." As he spoke, a movement at the back of the room caught his eye. Gabriella slipped in, looking haggard and remorseful. Their eyes met for a brief moment before Leroy continued his speech. After the ceremony, as families and friends mingled on the lawn, Gabriella approached hesitantly. "Leroy, Jason, I don't know what to say." Leroy's expression remained neutral. "I think you've said plenty over the past few months, Gabriella." She flinched at his tone but pressed on. "I know I've made terrible mistakes. I miss my son. Jason, please, can we talk?" Leroy looked at Jason, allowing him to make his own decision. Without hesitation, Jason turned his back on Gabriella. "I have nothing to say to you," he said coldly, walking away. Leroy watched his ex-wife's face crumple, feeling a twinge of, not pity, exactly, but a sort of detached sadness for what might have been. "Goodbye, Gabriella," he said quietly, following his son. That evening, Leroy and Jason hosted a graduation party. Their home was filled with laughter and warmth, a stark contrast to the tension that had permeated it months before. Friends, family, and supporters gathered to celebrate not just Jason's achievement, but the strength and resilience both Morrows had shown. As Leroy raised a toast to his son, he felt a sense of peace settle over him. They had weathered the storm, emerging stronger and closer than ever. The future stretched out before them, bright and full of possibility. "To new beginnings," Leroy said, clinking his glass against Jason's. Jason grinned, his eyes shining with a mixture of pride and determination. "And to unbreakable bonds." As the party continued around them, father and son shared a moment of understanding. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their bond forged in adversity and tempered by love. The night wore on, filled with music, laughter, and the warmth of true friendship. And as Leroy looked around at the life he and Jason had rebuilt, he knew that the best was yet to come.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I think I completely caught her off guard. I'm almost certain she expected me to say, "Yes, dear," and then follow along with whatever she wanted, just like I always had before. After all, hadn't that always been the pattern? She was used to me acquiescing, doing what she asked without question. I met Nora Bethany during my second year of college. We were both business management majors, enrolled in a production management class, and happened to be assigned to the same project. I was immediately drawn to her. Her looks, her personality, and her sense of humor. I asked her out, and to my delight, she said yes. Our relationship blossomed from there. We were inseparable during our junior year, and by the beginning of senior year, I proposed. She accepted, and we were married just a month after graduation. Soon after, we both found jobs, settling into the typical middle-class lifestyle. Everything seemed perfect, or at least, that's what I thought. Both Nora Bethany and I were thriving in our respective careers when everything began to change. After we found out we were expecting, Nora Bethany made the decision to step away from the workforce and dedicate herself to being a full-time mother. I supported her choice, knowing it would bring fulfillment to her life, while I continued to focus on my career. Over the years, I worked tirelessly, steadily climbing the corporate ladder. By the time I reached the position of regional manager, we were blessed with 3 wonderful children. I considered myself incredibly fortunate. I had a wife who loved me deeply, a woman who spoiled me with affection and care, and 3 beautiful children who were the center of my world. At the same time, my career was flourishing, and I was quickly gaining recognition as a rising star in the company. It wasn't just about the success, it was the fact that I truly loved my job. It gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment that mirrored the joy I felt at home with my family. Life, in that moment, felt like it was exactly how it was meant to be. It is a fact of corporate life that as you climb the corporate ladder, the workload gets heavier and heavier until you finally reach the point where you can delegate. I hadn't yet reached that point, but I was closing in on it. The heavier workload translated into late nights at the office and a lot of times when I had to bring work home with me. Those times meant a lot of late nights and busy weekends for me, but I didn't care because I had a goal. The vice president of sales and marketing was retiring in a month, and I was one of 3 men who had a shot at getting the position. Once there, my workload would only be a third of what I was doing in trying to get there. More responsibility, a lot of high-level decision-making, but I would be able to delegate the nuts and bolts work to subordinates. But first I had to get there, and that meant hard work, and hard work meant a pissed-off Nora Bethany. Nora Bethany had been planning a weekend getaway for us for almost 2 months. It was to be 4 nights and 5 days at Aspen, and she had already made the hotel reservations, purchased the lift tickets, arranged for her parents to take the kids, and started packing her bags. 2 days before we were to leave, I told her that I had to cancel. We have a project fastly approaching a deadline, and it is in trouble. I'm going to have to ride herd on it until it is done. Damn it, Walter, you can't do this to me again. That damn job had interfered with our last 4 vacations, 6 of our last 7 anniversaries, and caused you to forget every one of my birthdays for the last 10 years. You owe me this weekend, Walter. You owe me and I want it. Be reasonable, Nora Bethany. If I pull this project through on time, I'm almost a shoo-in for Benson's job when he retires. Is that what this is all about? Making points to get Benson's job? You make that sound like a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. It is a stupid thing. I just now realized I lost all those vacations, anniversaries, and birthdays because I kept my mouth shut. What does that mean? Nothing, Walter. Just go work on your damned project while I finish packing. Finish packing? Yes, Walter. Finish packing. I'm going with or without you, but I am going. You would go without me? Do you think that would be wise? A married woman alone? That would be like wearing a neon sign saying, "Here I am. Show me a good time." I fully intend to have a good time, Walter. I'd rather have it with you, but I'll manage if you don't go. Really, Nora Bethany, I don't. Just go to your reports, Walter, or whatever. I'm going, and that's that. I'm through letting your goddamn job interfere with things. The day we were supposed to leave for Aspen came, and when I got home from work, I found Nora Bethany putting the last of her suitcases in the car. I took one last shot at trying to get her to be reasonable. I'm serious, Nora Bethany. Going to Aspen alone is not a good idea. So come with me, Walter. You know I can't do that. I have to make sure that this project doesn't go belly up. I save the project, and I know I'll get Benson's job, and then things will get a lot easier. There won't be any more screwed up vacations or forgotten birthdays and anniversaries. I'll be in a decision-making position. Someone else will be doing the donkey work. That's nice, Walter, but I've been looking forward to this weekend for 2 months now, and I'd rather you go with me, but I'm going. I still don't think it is a good idea for you to go alone. I won't be alone, Walter. What does that mean? I'll call you tonight, Walter, after I get checked in at the hotel. Nora, enjoy your project, Walter, and she got in the car and backed down the drive. I stood there watching her go, and I wondered about her "I won't be alone" remark. As she turned the corner at the end of the block, I put it out of my mind and went into the house. I was reviewing some specifications when the phone rang. It was Nora Bethany, and she gave me her room number and the phone number of the hotel. She sounded out of breath, and I asked her why. I just did 25 laps in the indoor pool. I'm curious, Nora Bethany. What did you mean when you said you wouldn't be alone? Did I say that? Yes, you did. I must have meant that I expect to get hit on a lot while I'm here. I'm not a bad-looking broad, in case you have forgotten. I expect that I'll be kept on the dance floor all night. I probably won't even have to buy a drink after my first one. Well, I'm dripping wet, and I need to get out of this bathing suit and take a shower. I love you, baby. See you in 5 days. And she hung up. Now, I've never had any reason to doubt Nora Bethany, but to be absolutely honest about it, it was mostly because I didn't pay all that much attention to what she did. Why should I? She kept the house spotless. She spoiled me rotten. She raised 3 great kids, and I knew she loved me as much as I loved her. But 3 things just happened in the space of 6 hours that alone would have meant nothing. But taken together, they were screaming something at me. Just to satisfy myself, I called the number she gave me for the hotel, and when the desk clerk answered, I asked him what were the hours on the indoor pool, and I got the answer that I hoped I wouldn't. The last time I had been in that hotel 4 years previous, they didn't have an indoor pool. According to the desk clerk, they still didn't. Couple that with Nora Bethany's "I won't be alone" remark, and a red flag was being raised. The third thing, and the one I really didn't want to think about, was that I was almost positive that I heard someone else breathing heavily in the background while I was talking to her. All of a sudden, I wasn't as sure of my wife as I had always been. I made myself a drink, sat down on the couch and put my feet up on the hassock and tried to think of things that might have been an indication that my wife might have strayed on me. I did a lot of deep memory probing and found out that I really didn't know all that much about what went on around our house. I deferred everything to Nora Bethany. She wanted to paint the bathroom a creamy yellow. Yes, dear, whatever you want. Buy a leather sofa for the living room? Of course, dear, whatever you would like. She picked out my shirts, ties, and even my shoes, and I said yes, dear, and kept on doing whatever I was doing. She picked out the house we lived in. She picked our friends. She picked out the places where we went to eat, and she chose the films and TV shows we watched, and I just said yes, dear, and went along with it. Even this weekend that she had planned was all Nora Bethany. She picked the hotel. She decided where we were going to ski, and she even made a list of the runs we would take. She made dinner reservations for each one of the nights we were to stay there. She asked me if the arrangements were all right, and I said, yes, dear, just fine. It hit me that my wife could have been the neighborhood hookup queen, and I wouldn't have had a clue because I never paid enough attention. The next 24 hours were brutal, with all kinds of thoughts messing with my head. Then, at 10 on Friday night, Nora Bethany called and asked how I was doing. Sitting here having bad thoughts. My own fault, of course. If I was there, I wouldn't be here thinking the things I'm thinking, wondering about what I'm wondering about. And what would that be, babe? I wouldn't be sitting here wondering who it is that you were sleeping with while you were up there. There were several moments of silence from her end, and then she said, and just why would you think that? So, I told her about what I'd heard in the background when she called, and then about my call to the hotel. You lied about the pool, heavy breathing in the background, and the comment you let slip about not be alone. 2 and 2 have always equaled 4 to me, Nora Bethany. I can see we will need to have a talk when I get home. I don't see why. Your lack of outrage and lack of indignation over what I have just accused you of say all that needs to be said. Your I won't be alone comment before you even left tells me that you knew I probably wouldn't be going along, and you already had made other arrangements. To me, that means that this probably isn't the first time you have cheated on me, and it probably means that this weekend wasn't really meant for you and me anyway. You set up everything, even your lover. More silence from her end, and I said, your lack of response to that is just as telling. Good night. Nora Bethany, and I hung up on her. The phone rang again almost immediately, and it rang several times during the evening, but I ignored it. I was sitting at the kitchen table poring over the list of things I needed to do to keep the project on track when the phone rang. It was Nora Bethany. You hung up on me last night. Didn't have any more that needed to be said. Can't think of anything that needs to be said now, or that I need to listen to now. I've got a project I have to stay on top of, so you just go ahead and enjoy your long weekend with whomever it is you are sharing a bed with. There was a loud sigh of exasperation, and then Nora Bethany said, Walter, you do know that I love you, right? No, I don't know that anymore. If you loved me, truly loved me, this weekend wouldn't have happened. Even then, knowing what I'm thinking, I noticed that you didn't get in your car and race home to try and save your marriage. You can doubt it if you want, but I do love you, Walter, more than you can possibly realize. So please understand that I'm not saying this to hurt you. You could not bother going to work for a month, and it wouldn't affect your job. You could walk into Jared's office and piss in the potted plant in the corner, and all Jared would do is smile at you. I don't understand, Nora Bethany. What are you saying? Walter, you are a regional manager, and you will be Benson's replacement because Jared and I have been having an affair for the last 6 years. Don't let the news upset you, Walter. I love you. I really do. I sat there, phone to my ear, but stunned into silence. 6 years? She had been screwing my boss for 6 years? She had been screwing that son of a bitch for 6 years? I was a regional manager because she was screwing Jared? I hadn't gotten the job because of my hard work? Walter? Walter, are you still there? Yes, dear. We will talk about this when I get home. Yes, dear, whatever you say. I hung up the phone and then I sat there and stared at the wall. I spent the rest of the day stumbling around in a fog. I'd busted my butt for years to climb the corporate ladder only to find out that I didn't have anything to do with my success. I find out that my wife is a cheating 304 and had been for at least the last 6 years. And with Jared, my wife, born and bred in the South, was having an affair with another man. Not just another man, but one who was old enough to be her father. I tried to imagine his big body on top of my small white wife, and the image made me sick to my stomach. All the times he had smiled at me and shaken my hand, he was thinking, I'm screwing your wife, stupid, and I smiled back at him and shook his hand. I wondered how it started, but then I realized that it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered now was that it did start. Then I thought, that's 6 years with Jared. How many and for how long before Jared? Hell, if she was doing it while we were married, she was probably doing it while we were going steady and while we were engaged. Then I had a really bad thought. Were my kids really my kids? Obviously, None of them were Jared's, but could one or more be someone else's? 7 That evening, Nora Bethany called again. Are you okay, Walter? Just peachy. Nora Bethany, just peachy. So, tell me, is he with you now like he was the first time you called me? No, Walter, and I'm sorry about that. It was inexcusable of me. He isn't here right now. The reason I called, baby, is to apologize for how I dropped this on you. I should have waited and explained it to you face to face. What's to explain? You pretty much said it all. You let me know that I'm not worth a shit at my job and that the only reason I have one is that you are screwing my boss. Which, by the way, tells me that as far as you are concerned, I'm not worth a shit in bed either. I'd say that pretty much covers it all. It isn't that way, baby. You earned all your promotions. I didn't buy them for you. I just meant to say that you didn't have to worry about your job. As far as your abilities in bed are concerned, I'm perfectly happy with you. I love you, Walter. Honest to God, I do. That doesn't compute, Nora Bethany. If you were perfectly happy with me, why are you screwing Jared? You say that you love me, but how could you have done this to me if you really loved me? This weekend was never about the two of us from the start. It was always going to be for you and Jared. You and Jared both knew how I would respond to the project and trouble story. You both knew I wanted Benson's job and that I would leap at the chance to save the day. The two of you played me like a piano, and I made the music you expected me to. You probably would have gotten away with it too if you had slipped up and made that offhand comment about not being alone. You say that you love me? It has been 3 days now, Nora Bethany. 3 days during which you know that I know what is going on up there. But I noticed that you still aren't here trying to find some way to save anything from the mess you made. Goodbye, and I hung up on her. After hanging up on Nora Bethany, the phone started ringing almost every hour on the hour, and the caller ID showed as Aspen area code, so I never bothered answering it. I took the phone off the hook when I went to bed, and when I woke up in the morning, I put the handset back in the cradle, and it rang almost immediately. Caller ID said Aspen again, so I ignored it and went and took my shower. It was still ringing when I left the house for work. I stopped at Denny's for breakfast, and when I got to work, Stella, my secretary, greeted me with, "Your wife has been trying to reach you. She asked me to have you call her at this number as soon as you came in." I took the piece of paper she handed to me and watched her raise her eyebrows as I wadded it up and tossed it in the wastebasket without even looking at it. No calls from her, Stella. Just tell her I'm out of the office. I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, but I won't lie. I'll take messages, or I'll tell her you told me not to put her calls through. But if you are here, I won't tell her that you aren't. Thank you, Stella. I needed that. Needed what, Mr. Hamilton? After the weekend I've just had, it is nice to know that there are still honest women around. I took the paperwork on the troubled project and ripped it to shreds and dropped it on Jared's desk, and then I went into my office and busied myself with making phone calls. I took everything in me in basket and dumped it into the wastebasket and started cleaning out my desk. At 10, Stella came in. Your wife has called 4 times, and I've told her that you wouldn't take her calls, and she said fine. Tell him that I'll just have Jared call him. See if he refuses that call. Could I ask what is going on here? It would seem, Stella, that your employer and my wife are upset that I found out they spent the weekend together in Aspen and then had the temerity to get pissed about it. Well, since I won't talk to Jared either, and he is your boss, I guess I need to get you out of the line of fire. You can honestly say that I am out of the office if either of them calls again, and I got up and left. I went home and took the phone off the hook and got busy doing what needed to be done. I didn't go into work at all on Tuesday. At 6 Tuesday evening, I put the phone back on the hook and finished up what I was doing. At 9, I heard a car door slam, and a minute or so later, I heard Nora Bethany holler out, "Honey, I'm home." I didn't answer back and just waited for her to come find me. It was a very awkward moment when she walked into the kitchen followed by Jared. She walked over to me and bent to kiss me and got a very surprised look on her face when I turned my head away. The surprised look turned into a hurt look, and then she said, "Why haven't you been answering the phone, and why wouldn't you take my calls at work?" "Because we don't have anything to say to each other anymore." Obviously, I didn't do a very good job of explaining things. I thought that might be it, so I persuaded Jared to come home with me so we could sit down and talk about this like adults. I almost smiled at that. Well, yes, I guess that would be good. Being like adults, I mean. Why don't you open a bottle of wine and pour us all a glass so we can relax? Yes, dear. What would you like? I think we still have a couple of bottles of the Jacob's Creek Merlot left. Coming right up, I said as I got up and went down to the basement where we kept the wine rack. I took a bottle of the Merlot back to the kitchen, and as I poured the 3 glasses, I was wondering why I hadn't just gotten up, stomped the shit out of Jared, and then tossed the 2 of them out of the house. I think it was because of the everything is fine attitude that Nora Bethany was exhibiting, and I just wanted to see how stupid she thought I really was. I took the wine over to the table and then sat down to see what was going to happen next. Nora Bethany took a sip of her wine, and then she started talking. First, Walter, you have to understand that my love for you is deep and unconditional. You are my life, and you must believe that. I love you and only you, and I don't want to spend my life with anyone else. That said, I've become attached to Jared in a way that I can't fully explain. I don't love him. I never have, but there's something about him that keeps drawing me back. It's not about emotion. It's purely a physical thing. He means nothing to me otherwise. Then Jared spoke up. It's true, Walter. I'm in love with Nora Bethany and have been for years. I've begged her to leave you and be with me, but she refuses. She loves you and won't leave. So I take what I can get and try to be happy with that. So, you see, Walter, you have nothing to worry about. I love you and only you. Well, I guess that makes it all better, Walter said sarcastically. So, this is just about some unexplainable attachment and nothing else. Silly me. Here I was worrying for nothing. I'm glad we got that cleared up, baby. Why don't you just go on upstairs to the bedroom while I say goodnight to Jared? I'll be up in a little while, and we can make love. I looked at her and started laughing. I laughed so hard that I had tears in my eyes. I got myself under control, and then I backhanded Jared so hard that he and his chair went backwards onto the floor. He scrambled to get up, and by the time he was on his feet, I was standing in front of him, and I smashed him in the mouth 3 times, and he went back down. I kicked him 3 times hard in the crotch, and then I leaned down, grabbed his shirt front, and pulled his face up to within inches of mine. Consider that my resignation, you son of a bitch. And then I slammed his head back down on the floor and headed for the door. Where are you going? Asked Nora Bethany. I'm going home. Home? You are home. No, I'm not. When I found out what you were doing, my first thought was to throw your cheating butt out on the street. Then I thought of all the memories of you that the house would keep pushing at me, and I decided that I would be the one to get out. I rented an apartment Monday, and I spent yesterday moving into it. That's my home now. Don't do this to me, Walter. I love you. You know I do. I don't want you to leave me. Please, Walter, I don't want to lose you. You should have thought of that before you decided to get involved with Jared. And while we're on the subject, Nora Bethany, even if I believed your excuse about being addicted to him, there had to be a first time with Jared when you didn't yet know all the things you claim to now. Were you still my loving wife then? Was I still the one you wanted to be with when you were with him the first time? Were you concerned about losing me then, Nora Bethany? I turned and walked out the door while she kept crying out for me not to go. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.